Director of National Intelligence. Her confirmation votes just yesterday. In the meantime, there was yet again another Republican who voted against one of Trump's nominees here, and that, of course, was former Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, voting no on RFK Jr. He issued a statement. I want to put up this live vantage point there. Outside the U.S. Capitol, McConnell saying in this statement, quote, "I'm a survivor of childhood polio. In my lifetime, I've watched vaccines save millions of lives from devastating diseases across America and around the world. I will not condone the relitigation of proven cures, and neither will millions of Americans who credit their survival and quality of life scientific miracles." McConnell goes on to say individuals, parents, and families have a right to push for a healthier nation and demand the best possible scientific guidance on preventing and treating illness. But a record of trafficking and dangerous conspiracy theories and eroding trust in public health institutions does not entitle Mr. Kennedy to lead these important efforts. McConnell goes on to say this administration, led by the same president who delivered a medical miracle with Project Warp Speed, deserves a leader who is willing to acknowledge without qualification the efficacy of life-saving vaccines and who can demonstrate an understanding of basic elements of the U.S. healthcare system. Mr. Kennedy failed to prove he is the best possible person to lead America's largest health agency. As he takes office, I sincerely hope Mr. Kennedy will choose not to sow further doubt and division, but to restore trust in our public health institutions. So,
hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell. I am doing a live stream on YouTube and on Rumble. YouTube has the dashboard. The Asian market is open. The Japanese index is trading now. And the Hang Seng will be opening soon. Let me do a quick market cap. The S&P 500 futures are at 6,136. The pound USD trade is at 1.25. Natural gas futures is at 3.65. Gold futures are at 2,960. Brent crude is trading at 75.13. Copper futures are trading at 4.78. The Hang Seng closed yesterday at 21,814. Market hasn't opened up yet for the Hang Seng, and the Nikkei is at 39,333. Please help support my work by subscribing to all my channels. I have 4 channels on YouTube. I have Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Please follow me on X. I have 2 channels on X. You can also follow me on GETTR. All the links are in the description of this video and all my videos. Help support my work also by sharing the links, asking your social media and your friends to follow my work and to subscribe. I have thousands of videos for free. To help support my work, please share the links, but also you can donate on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee, or be a paid member to my Patreon channel. All the links are in the description of this video. It's through people donating and purchasing my products that helps me to do these videos for free. I have thousands of videos for free for people. So please help support my work by getting the products, donating, being a paid member to Patreon, and sharing the links and subscribing. With that said, let me just plug one product. Before I plug the product and go over the videos, it's really important to pay attention to the protocol that I have. It's called the core. There's 4 pillars to the core of this protocol. Taking max 35 or max 14 to boost up your immune system. Taking C60 to soak up free radicals. Taking turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans to bring down inflammation and boost up your immune system. And taking Boomer Boost to improve your metabolism and boost up your energy levels. That's the core, and all the other supplements that I offer, you stack that and in a customized way and you can target certain systems in your body. If you do what I do, you're going to slow down the aging process, you're going to increase your longevity, you're going to have a lot more energy, and you're going to have more vitality. The system works, you just got to pay attention and do it. The first part of the core is taking max 14 or max 35. Take a teaspoon a day, swish it in your mouth, gargle about 20 seconds or so, and then swallow. What's going to happen is you're going to improve the health of your oral cavity and your oral pharynx. You're going to maintain the mucosal barrier that you need, and you're going to improve the health of the epithelial tissue. When you do that, you're improving your immune system. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the max 14 or the max 35. Take it every day. If you're not feeling well because of the cold season, take a tablespoon a day or 2, and then go back to your maintenance of a teaspoon a day. Thank you for listening. Now let's go to the videos here. Let's start with Live Now.
Workforce Committee, who joins me. Congressman Owens, thanks so much for being with us. It's good to see you again. In your view, why is Linda McMahon right for the Department of Education?
You know, it's interesting. It's so good to see that we're living this window to see what innovation looks like. Our country has been always the greatest country because we think outside the box. We continue to try to find out how to produce the best products at the best price and get a return on investment. There's nothing more important for that to happen in education. Our kids are our products. Our kids, the way they perform is how we pass our legacy on. And we're finding, not only in the presidency, a remarkable innovator and business person, but Elon Musk, a remarkable innovator and business person, and so is Linda McMahon. So it's nice that we're disrupting this whole process. We've had these experts for 50 years. And what have they given us? We went from #1 back in the late 1970s to at the very end of the very back of the industrialized countries. And they've proven that they do not care about our kids. And we now have an administration and a person named Linda McMahon who will do the very best to make sure our kids not only educated, but they're ready for the workforce and the careers that they can be very excited about, and to join the middle class, which is what is a dream for every parent, to have their kids to join.
I see. We have a live picture there on the Senate floor right now. I believe senators are voting to advance the confirmation of Howard Lutnick to be the next Secretary of Commerce. I just wanted to ask you this. For your Senate colleagues who want to confirm McMahon as well, Congressman, why confirm a secretary for a department that they want to see dismantled?
Well, first of all, because the department's going to be around still for a while. It is going to take an act of Congress to finally get rid of it. But meanwhile, why not go ahead and reform it? Why not restructure it? Why not make sure if we have to decentralize it to make sure it's working well in the right place across this country? There's a lot to be done while we wait to have this put in a different place. And by the way, in terms of the Department of Education, understand that we did not have one in 1978. For those who are concerned, we did very well. We're actually #1 in the world during that time. Once that deal was made between Carter and the teachers' labor union, we have gone backwards ever since. So what we do when this goes away, we will innovate. We'll put more power into the states and to the parents, where they can oversee the education of their own children. We'll be much better in our process when we, the people, have a better hand in terms of education. So that's the reason why. It's going to take some time to get rid of it. We need to have somebody oversee it in the meanwhile.
So your view is that it eventually will be gotten rid of?
Yeah, this is unlike the...
in 4 years, in the Trump term, do you think that will happen?
All right, I'm going to pivot over to CNN. Acting U.S. Attorney quits after being told to drop Eric Adams' case.
This week, we just told you about multiple high-level resignations at the Justice Department and the Southern District of New York U.S. Attorney's Office, all of them apparently prompted by the Trump administration's order for a New York court to drop the corruption case against New York Mayor Eric Adams. And now CNN has just obtained 2 letters. One is the resignation letter from the acting U.S. Attorney in New York. The other is the response she got from Trump's Deputy Attorney General, Emil Bobet. Let's go straight to CNN's Evan Paris. Evan, just to remind everyone, Nadine Sassoon, the U.S. Attorney, the acting U.S. Attorney in question, is a conservative, a member of Danielle Sassoon, a conservative, a member of Federalist Society. She clerked Branson and Scalia. That's just a little background for people. What's in the letters?
That's right, Jake. And we should note she was put in place as the acting attorney, U.S. attorney in Manhattan by this current Trump team. In other words, they believe she could be trusted to run this office. And now it appears to have fallen apart all over because Emil Bove, who is the Deputy Attorney General, he's the acting Deputy Attorney General, had ordered her and her office to dismiss the charges, the corruption charges, against New York City Mayor Eric Adams. And so these two letters here, Jake, are extraordinary because they are part of a spiraling crisis that is ongoing right now at the Justice Department. Not only is Danielle Sassoon also has she resigned, but also two officials here at the Justice Department headquarters have resigned as a result of what has been going on. I'll read you just of what some of what Danielle Sassoon says in her letter to the Attorney General yesterday. She accuses Bove of essentially being part of a quid pro quo with attorneys for Eric Adams. She describes a meeting that happened on January 31st, in which she says, I attended a meeting on January 31st with Mr. Bove, Adams' counsel, and members of my team. Adams' attorneys repeatedly urged what amounted to a quid pro quo, indicating that Adams would be in a position to assist with the department's enforcement priorities only if this indictment were dismissed. What Adams and his attorneys were offering was that he would help with the enforcement of immigration activities in New York City, you know, the sanctuary status, all the things that Donald Trump wants, if they drop this case. And, you know, that's one of the things she makes in this accusation. Now, Bove, for his part, responds today saying, essentially, we're accepting your resignation. And he also puts on administrative leave the attorneys who are running this case in the Manhattan U.S. Attorney's Office. And I'll read you just a part of what he says. He says that they determined that there was weaponization in bringing this case, Jake. And he says the Justice Department will not tolerate the insubordination and apparent misconduct reflected in the approach that you and your office have taken in this matter. So what we know now, Jake, is this. After he had asked for the office to dismiss this case, and she had declined, saying nobody in her office was willing to sign the documents to dismiss the case, what happens next is that Bove goes to the public integrity section here in Washington, and he asks them, go to New York and sign these dismissals. They also decline, and they resign. So as a result, Kevin Driscoll, who's the top career lawyer in the criminal division, overseeing the public integrity section, he resigned today. And John Keller, also the acting head of the public integrity section, Jake, he resigned as a result of all of this.
Fascinating stuff. Evan Pettis, thanks so much. Let's talk about this with Ellie Honig, CNN senior legal analyst, who was an associate U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York. And Ellie, again, this woman, this acting U.S. attorney, Danielle Sassoon, was a conservative, is a conservative. She clerked for Scalia. She's a member of the Federalist Society. This is not her being a liberal activist prosecutor. Tell us about what kind of statement her resignation makes, do you think, not to mention the people in the public integrity section of DOGE?
Well, Jake, these resignations were courageous and necessary moves. It was the only right and principled and ethical move by all of them. All of them were faced with really a prosecutor's nightmare scenario. They were given a direct order from the DOJ bosses to dismiss a perfectly legitimate indictment before it ever saw a trial jury for purely overtly political reasons. If we look back a few days to Emil Bove's instruction to dismiss the case, that letter is a crazy document. It is completely political. It is explicitly political. It says, the reason I'm ordering you to dismiss this case has nothing to do with the merits of the case, nothing to do with the evidence, but because Eric Adams essentially needs to be freed up to pursue Donald Trump's immigration agenda. So good for Danielle Sassoon, good for the other DOJ prosecutors. They did the right thing. They took a stand here.
So there were a lot of concerns that the original case against Mayor Adams was dropped for political reasons. And let's be frank here, it's not just about their desire for him to carry out the anti-illegal immigration agenda in New York. Mayor Adams has been very explicitly wooing Donald Trump. And now multiple resignations are linked to this decision from the Justice Department. Do you think the actions of Emil Bove are over the line?
100%. I think they're over the line. I think they're political, and I think they're wrong. And Jake, as you said, Eric Adams has been angling for this type of treatment. We thought maybe it would be a pardon for months now. I will tell you, in the SDNY circles that I sort of dwell in, people have been rolling their eyes at this for a long time, saying, oh, he's definitely going to get out of this somehow, get a pardon. But the way this all happened makes it even worse. The fact that Emo Bove instructed SDNY to do it, and by the way, when Danielle Sassoon refused to do it, and you're right, by the way, to note that she's a conservative, not only was she a Federalist Society member, she penned an op-ed against Joe Biden a few weeks ago, just sort of gratuitously criticizing Joe Biden's pardons. But when Bove told her to do this, to dismiss the case, and when Danielle Sassoon refused, part is really chilling to me. Emo Bove then fired back with a letter that Evan just referred to that said, fine, everyone around you is going to be put on administrative leave too, and now we're going to investigate you, not criminally, but through our Inspector General, which is the in-house ethics watchdog. So that is sending an unmistakable and I think chilling message, which is get on board with the political agenda here or be punished.
And it's amazing because she was prosecuting an allegedly corrupt Democrat who is kissing up to Trump. It's really remarkable. You couldn't write this if you put this in a screenplay. People would be like, that's too broad. That would never happen. Elione, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
All right.
All righty. So that's. Let's go back to live now.
Agency, I welcome the opportunity to go after some of these programs and some of the spending. But I think there is a well-established process that does not include wholesale elimination or pausing of funding.
President Trump says he supports Elon Musk's cost-cutting efforts.
They're doing a hell of a job. It's an amazing job they're doing.
And more cuts could be coming. While speaking to the World Government Summit in Dubai, Elon Musk called for the U.S. to, quote, delete entire agencies. In New York, Connor Hansen, Fox News.
Connor, thanks so much. And Connor reiterated that point there, that piece of reporting that judge is ruling today, a judge adding a 1-week pause on the Trump plan today to put 2,100 USAID workers on leave. That extension bars action by the Trump administration while the judge writes his opinion on the move to eliminate whole cloth the foreign aid agency. Let's listen to some more of these prominent Democrats outside the VA headquarters in D.C. today. Let's listen.
This is from Organized Labor and Vote Yes, Vote Vets. I know all stand for, in unison in opposing the Trump administration disastrous policy toward the VA. I know that all of us do. Now, like a third of the VA employees, I myself am a veteran. And I say that the VA is the finest public healthcare system, not just in this country, but worldwide. A leader in care, a leader in training, in research and innovation, a leader in compassion. But President Trump, the DOGE, and the VA leadership have launched an all-out attack on the federal workforce like none ever before. This is unprecedented. Now, they want to do nothing more than just sink their claws into the VA's $300 billion budget and funnel that money to the corporate health care. Now, we know that's not right. Is that right? That's not right, right? They want to give it to private entities, to put private profit above the health and the welfare of veterans, and we will not stand for that. Veterans have served this country, and they deserve the very best care possible. And we're here to make sure that that does not go any further. We are here. I'm not thinking it's a disgrace. What do you think? It's a disgrace. Stanford University found that veterans who need emergency care are more likely to survive when they get care from the VA compared to the private care. Now, if DOGE actually believe in efficiency, which they don't, and we all know that, right? They should study what the VA does and not destroy the VA. They need to study. They need to talk to the employees that's actually out here doing this work every single day. We're going to have some folk from the VA nurses today that's going to talk to you and tell you what they do every day. And it's so vitally important. And brothers and sisters, we're here to stand with you. AFGE is going to stand with you every step of the way. And I know that all of our colleagues, all of our brothers and sisters are gonna stand with you. But we need to send a loud message, not just today, but until we get this job done. How many of y'all in agreement with me? We're gonna get the job done. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right,
And I'd like
I'm gonna
bring
go
up my-
to the 5 at Fox. They posted this 1 hour ago.
So check it out here. You're looking live at the White House, where in just moments from now, President Trump and Indian Prime Minister Modi are set to hold a news conference. And while we wait for that, let's talk about the Democrats who cried Musk. Former Congressman Dean Phillips trying to warn his party that the collective freakout over the world's richest man and self-proclaimed DOGE father could destroy their credibility in the long run. Watch this.
Unfortunately, Democrats are only focused on one thing right now, Mr. Musk. The fact of the matter, he's quite popular. We're missing the boat as Democrats. And all I'm saying is that sometimes it's better to join them and actually play a role in how the strategy works, rather than so pathetically, frankly, try to combat something that clearly is a steamroller, and Democrats are being steamrolled. I think Democrats should join the club and then have more credibility to actually raise the alarm about constitutional issues. Right now, it's the boy who cried wolf.
But Dean Phillips might as well be shouting into the void of that limestone mountain of paperwork. Democrats name-dropping Musk at 2 different events. First, in a House hearing on USAID, that's an agency that DOGE gutted, and another rally outside the Department of Veterans Affairs. Watch it.
You can't spell felon without Elon.
Trump and Musk like to say, we're reading out fraud, waste, and abuse. We're looking at efficiency. That's a dog whistle.
Elon Musk ripped up the Constitution and our system of checks and balances. The Trump
No,
administration.
he didn't rip up the Constitution. What he basically is doing is he's offering his time and effort to find wasteful spending so we don't get taxed to death. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the great probiotics that I offer. The one I'm talking about right now is the powdered version of the probiotic. I also have a VeggieCap version. I use the powdered version. You mix it with soft foods like hummus or yogurt. You can mix it with filtered water or put it in a smoothie. It's a great way to get probiotics into your system to improve your gut health. By improving your gut health, you're going to improve your skin, your hair, your nails, your organ systems like your liver, your brain, and you're going to bring down inflammation in the gut. And by bringing down inflammation in the gut, you're going to improve your immune system. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the probiotics that I offer. I have it in a powdered form and also in a VeggieCap form. Both are very high quality. Take them every day for proper health. And with a good gut biome, you're going to improve your metabolism. You're going to be able to absorb your nutrients. You're going to improve the communication between your gut and your liver, and also your gut and your brain. It's really important. With a good gut biome, you'll be able to sleep better. With a good gut biome, you'll be able to concentrate better. You'll have more mental clarity. And with a good gut biome, you're reducing the chances of early onset of dementia. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the 2 probiotics that I offer. Take a probiotic every day, and you're going to get good health benefits from them. But even more, stack it with other things that I offer, and that way you're targeting multiple systems and you're improving your body, improving your immune system, improving your energy, and in a holistic approach, proper diet, exercise, new supplementation, you're really going to supercharge your health. But it's a holistic approach. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the probiotic, get healthy.
Unelected billionaire Elon Musk have led a reckless and illegal attack on USAID.
9 million veterans are watching you give them the middle finger, and we're not going to stand for it.
President Trump revealing DOGE's next target while providing the group some cover.
I think that the Internal Revenue Service will be looked at like everybody else. Just about everybody's gonna be looked at, so it's, they're doing a hell of a job. It's an amazing job they're doing. I call it the force of super geniuses, but it's building. And, you know, they go up and they talk to some of the people about certain deals and the people get all tongue-tied. They can't talk.
Judge, it's hard to understand why the Democrats are so mad at Elon Musk. He voted for Obama. He created the best electric car, which they purport to love. He can't run for president. He's doing things for free. And they just think that he is enemy number one.
He's enemy number one because he's showing that there is wasteful spending. There's not enough accountability of the agencies to the president, but also to Congress. Many of these agencies refused to provide receipts of how they're spending the money to Congress, like USAID. So you have lack of transparency, that's one issue. And then the thing is that there are conduits within these agencies where there's corruption. There is kickbacks that are taking place. Black operations with the national security state. Lots of nefarious things are happening. Not all of it is nefarious. Some of it is just pure poor management. Taking money in and not really caring how it goes out. And then on top of it, you have these agencies that are run like old bureaucracies, all right? With modern technology, new management theories, these agencies could easily run much more efficiently with less people, with the proper technology and the proper management tools. They don't have to hire as many people. So you're getting rid of the corruption, you're getting rid of the wasteful spending, and then you're doing a drill down on how they were using these agencies to promote woke agendas that the American people really didn't want to pay for. So that's why they're kicking and screaming. Some of these pet projects for woke agendas, it's going to get axed. These conduits for impropriety, it's going to be found and people are going to get prosecuted. These black operations that are going on with the national security state, they're going to be shut down. That's why they're going after him. Because it's not about him, it's about the Democrats' corruption. But it's not just the Democrats. The corruption's also on the Republican side. But the ones that are kicking and screaming the most, they're the Democrats. And that's usually a sign. When someone's kicking and screaming, when someone is investigating a group of people or an agency, and they're just kicking and screaming and slow walking and not being transparent, that's usually because they have something to hide.
I think it just goes to show you that it's all about politics for them. And the sad part about that statement is that it ignores the American people. I mean, we finally have someone who is willing to take a look at all of the fraud, the waste and abuse in our government and in the bureaucracy. And as opposed to applauding that and saying, great, this is going to benefit the American people who pay through taxes through the nose, instead they say they're only focused on how horrible Elon Musk is or how horrible Donald Trump is. And I think it's very frustrating because to me it's disappointing, Harold, that the Democrats are not appreciative of this kind of thing. Because in the end, but you saw that Fetterman, Hakeem Jeffries, James Carville, Dean Phillips. I mean, these guys, even Hakeem Jeffries is saying we've got to find common ground with them on something. But, you know, they ignored the history of the Clinton presidency when they fired 400,000 people, bureaucrats, and they called it the National Partnership Reinventing Government to make the federal government less expensive. And it was Obama who pledged to do the same in 2011. So all this does is it comes down to hate. It's like, you know, when you get divorced, you hate the other person so much, you don't care if it hurts the kids.
It's not just, I don't know if it's, they do hate Trump and they do hate Elon, but it's not because of them. It's because of what they're doing. They're actually looking at the details, looking under the hood and seeing the corruption. They don't like it. They don't like being told that they were fleecing America and here are the receipts. So I think we will never have a president like Trump again, nor will we have a situation where the stars align in such a way where key cabinet officials, Trump and Elon Musk, are all hitting on all cylinders. In our lifetime, we'll never see this again. So enjoy the ride. It's going to be a wondrous 4 years, but we'll never see anything like this again. So they have to be successful. They have to be able to shine that light and stop this practice of bloated government and unwise spending with taxpayer dollars. Our society is completely inefficient. It can be much more efficient. All right, but you don't have to be you don't have to have technocracy to do this. I'm against technocracy. There is something that is important in chaotic systems, and it to be a little messy. But what has happened is the administrative state has built these conduits through these agencies to funnel money and to spin on pet projects, and we need to stop that. So it's really important that Elon and his DOGE team and Trump and his cabinet are successful, because we will never see this sort of an alignment in the White House in our lifetime. It's very important that he's successful to chip away the best that he can at this administrative state.
And then we're actually going to talk about Department of Education a little bit too, because that's supposedly about kids. I found out today that Bernie Sanders was the chairman of the Education Committee for 4 years. Under Biden, had one hearing on education the entire time, and then they go and complain. Hey, Harold, what do you think about these protests that are a throwback? Are they having any effect?
I don't, first of all, good to be with you again. I don't think so. I think that Dean Phillips is largely right. I think the judge is as well. I tried to say yesterday, and perhaps I didn't say it as clearly as I wanted to. There's a time for outrage, and there's a time to assess impact. The outrage for Democrats should have ended when the election ended. There were so many awful things said about President Trump. He said some awful things about Democrats, but I think Democrats said more awful things about him. And the instinct to want to want to try to work with him, I think, is the right instinct. So the outrage is there. You now got to look at the impact. The country, no one has ever won office saying, elect me, I will grow government, I will grow the debt, and I will make it unrecognizably large. Anyone that tries to do that has lost. Democrat presidents, you mentioned it, and I like your Valentine's Day read, Judge. You mentioned how these Democrats that Obama wanted to cut, Clinton wanted to cut, their reinventing government, and no one ever did. The thing I would urge Democrats to do, as opposed to standing outside and singing and being so critical, if you're going to be critical, you have to answer what Elon Musk, who is a popular guy, and Donald Trump, who just won the election, has a 53% approval rating, counter their cuts with other cuts. Senators Cassidy and Brigg today, in the last 24 hours, have said, look, Senator Cassidy said, cutting medical funding is not going to help LSU. We're from a red state, and we don't, our tax dollars, we get back more tax dollars. Senator Brigg said you can't cut medical funding as well. These are the kinds of things you should be focused on, as opposed to the yelling and the kind of scattered outrage that seems to afflict the party. I'm a believer that the reason that Elon Musk is able to do this, I say to Democrats in Congress and Republicans, the reason he's able to usurp your responsibilities, because you haven't exercised oversight responsibility in so long, and you haven't been a budgeting body in so long. You go through but shutdowns and defaults. That's the only language that comes from Congress. If you want to take back this responsibility, hold the hearings. identify cuts that you impose as opposed to the ones the president's talking about. And with that, Your Honor, that's my opening argument.
All right, well, we will continue on, and the federal government
I
has
rest
the
my face.
federal government less popular than ever, so the question kind of is, if not now, when would you try to cut it?
It's gotta be now, Dana.
It's
Can
gotta
I
be.
tell you a story about Robin?
Exactly, it's gotta be now. It has to be now, because if we don't do it, it will never happen. It will only get bigger. We gotta do it now. Or the technocracy is going to take over us. And the Democrats are totally on the wrong side of this. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the vitamin C and magnesium. This helps to boost up your immune system and improves your skin. Drink it with filtered water. If you're not feeling well because of the cold season, take a double dose. Make sure you drink it with filtered water. When you mix this, if you take this with taking daily collagen and drink 64 ounces of filtered water, you're going to notice that your dermal layer for your skin improves. And in a very short amount of time, in about 1 month, you're going to notice your skin improves. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the vitamin C. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. Get the vitamin C, improve your skin, take it with the collagen, make sure you drink filtered water, and improve your immune system. Make sure you drink it with filtered water. Why filtered water, Dr. Paul Cottrell? Because your tap water has a lot of chemicals in it that cause disruption for your immune system and your endocrine system. And there's a lot of particulate matter in there that could make you sick. So you want to filter that out. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, boost up your immune system, and make sure you filter your water.
Robin Dunn Marcos worked for these two nonprofits, International Rescue Committee and the Church World Service. She leapfrogs over to the Biden administration to work for HHS, the refugee office, the one that lost all the little kids. And then she steers $1 billion to the two nonprofits that she used to work for. That's how this whole game works. We're finding out HHS under Joe Biden spent $22 billion on migrants. $22 billion. And it's not just these little tent cities. They were buying them cars. They were helping them own homes. They were paying off their credit cards. How'd they get a credit card? I don't know. They were buying college tuition. They were giving them startup money to start businesses, Harold. And they were,
Yeah, no, Harold's been good today.
so far. These are the kind of things we're spending money on. We are staging hamster fight clubs, Dana. We're putting dead turtles on treadmills. Now, I know what happens when you put anything dead in the treadmill. It just flops right off. I've watched videos on YouTube of this before. They've injected puppies with cocaine.
What?
Now, the cocaine was pure. The puppies wanted to be injected, but it doesn't make it right, Dana. They were sticking marbles into cats' anuses and then electroshocking them. These are the kind of wicked experiments that the government is using your taxpayer on.
Oh,
there's more.
What was the point of the marble?
Yeah. Don't ask me. I don't have this sort of fetish. They spent $3 million for the Department of Education to write a report to say that no one reads reports.
Right, exactly.
How about this? $50 million to the Climate Justice Alliance, who believes that climate justice travels through a free Palestine.
Yeah.
Do you know what that means? I don't know what that means, Dana. They spent 25 grand for shrinks for trans refugees in Greece. Now, if you're in the trenches, like we are in cable news, we've been doing this a long time. Yep. This is like free money, okay? I can come out and I can read this every day of the week. Doesn't matter what the Democrats say. They have to defend this. And I haven't seen one single Democrat on any of these shows defending any of these kooky projects. And every day we read this stuff and expose it, and they're not saying anything or defending it, they're losing. And they've lost every single day since DOGE started up.
That's a good point, because the Democrats are demanding more transparency. I'm not against it, but the more there's transparency, the more kinds of things like that you find.
Well, all I know is when I get home, I'm cleaning my marbles. So Dean Phillips stepped out of the prison of two ideas, where Harold lives. You know, it's the next step in the gradual enlightenment that the Democrats must pursue, but most of them aren't. Right now, for these Democrats, their only hope is that things go bad for Trump. And you can see that already in the press as they're looking at the price of eggs. But for bad things to go for Trump, then things have to go bad for America, because his entire plank is America first. So it's a terrible
attention, were you or someone you love exposed to a CAPTCHA?
Terrible hope to have. You know, it doesn't really clear a path for a new vision when you just hope that things will go wrong. And they're still clinging to this fantasy that if Trump fails, then they can return to what exactly? There's nothing there. Woke is dead. Identity politics is dead. DEI is dead. Open borders is dead. CNN, MSNBC, all of legacy media is dead, dead, double dead. Trump may well hit a snag at some point, but that's not going to solve the Democrats' bigger and greater problem. What do you stand for? It can't be everything that's not Trump, because he's the common sense president. You can't be the not common sense president. You can't be the not America first president or not America first party. You know, we're wacky and weird. America last. We want big government and bigger trans. It's not going to fly. So I think Harold hit on it, probably by accident. But this is, they got to be for something. They got to think about it. And their argument about accountability is hysterical, because they say Musk has no accountability. Well, duh, that's why he's doing this. He's not an elected official. He doesn't owe anybody anything, and he's holding you accountable. And the people who voted for Trump have voted for DOGE, and they're going to hold them accountable. They expect them to hold you accountable. The bottom line is, you can't undo the undoing. The undoing has started. You can't put the dish back together after it fell off the hutch. As my mom used to say, when she would throw dishes at me. I'm done. But that was good.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the natto kinase. This is a dual purpose product. This is going to help break up clots because it's fibrinolytic, but also it helps to bring down your LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. That means you're improving your cardiovascular health. Take this every day. Please take this every day, all right, and improve your cardiovascular health. This couples really well with vitamin D3 and K2 and omega-3. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, get $5 off any order. Get the natto kinase. Also take a look at my longevity cardiovascular box that has a lot of supplements that stack in a certain way to reduce the chances of plaque buildup and also slowly reduce the plaque that has already built up. Good cardiovascular health starts with proper diet, proper exercise, and proper supplementation. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get healthy. You can do it. And I'm telling you exactly how to stack to do it. Make sure you use discount 5 to get $5 off. All right. What I want to do is take a look at another video here. Right now, Live Now is cycling. I guess there was a car crash in Munich. Let me give you a market update. The S&P 500 futures is at 6,141. The pound USD trade is at 1.25. Futures for natural gas is at 3.65. The futures for gold is at 2,962. Brent crude is trading at $75.2 a barrel. Copper futures trading at 4.80. Hang Seng has opened up and is trading at 22,186. And the Japanese Nikkei is trading at 39,250.
As we reported, Major and significant.
Let's go to live now here.
Into multiple people in Magdeburg, Germany, killing several. Remember, the suspect in that incident was a Saudi doctor who previously had come to various regional authorities' attention. In this case, the suspect, who's now been arrested, was a 24-year-old Afghan asylum seeker, according to the state's interior minister there in Bavaria, where Munich is. In the meantime, let's move, though, from Germany. And remember, we'll have live coverage of the Munich Security Conference this weekend, but let's go back to Brussels, where
DOGE and Elon Musk had just
held a press conference at NATO headquarters. Let's watch some of it.
With my wife, Jenny, who's been meeting with families of U.S. troops. Well, that's what this is all about for me, for President Trump and the Defense Department.
And I am a boyfriend.
I also want to express a special thanks to the Secretary General
Film in Paris.
For your boldness, for your friendship, for your leadership, and most especially for your urgency of the matter.
Today's actually a really exciting,
which is great to see from the leader of NATO. Look forward to working very closely with him and his team. And before we're talking about what we've done at the ministerial, I want to reaffirm a few things from this podium. First, as we see it, NATO's strategic objectives are to prevent great power conflict in Europe, deter nuclear and non-nuclear aggression, and defeat threats to treaty allies should deterrence fail. Second, the U.S. is committed to building a stronger, more lethal NATO. However, we must ensure that European and Canadian commitment to Article 3 of this treaty is just as strong. Article 3 says that allies, and I quote, by means of continuous and effective self-help and mutual aid, will maintain and develop their individual and collective capacity to resist armed attack. Leaders of our European allies should take primary responsibility for defense of the continent, which means security ownership by all allies, guided by a clear understanding of strategic realities, and it's an imperative given the strategic realities that we face. And that begins with increasing defense spending. 2% is a start, as President Trump has said, but it's not enough. Nor is 3%, nor is 4%, more like 5%. Real investment, real urgency. We can talk all we want about values. Values are important. But you can't shoot values. You can't shoot flags, and you can't shoot strong speeches. There is no replacement for hard power. As much as we may not want to like the world we live in some cases, there's nothing like hard power. It should be obvious that increasing allied European defense spending is critical, as the President of the United States has said. Also critical is expanding our defense industrial base capacity on both sides of the Atlantic. Our dollars, our euros, our pounds must become real capabilities. The U.S. is fully committed under President Trump's leadership to pursue these objectives in the face of today's threats. Yesterday, I had a chance to attend the Ukraine Defense Contact Group. Today, participated in both the NATO Ministerial and the Ukraine Council. In both, we discussed Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. I had the chance to brief allies on President Trump's top priority: a diplomatic, peaceful end to this war, as quickly as possible, in a manner that creates enduring and durable peace. The American Defense Department fully supports the efforts of the Trump administration. And we look to allies to support this important work with leading on Ukraine security assistance now through increased contributions and greater ownership of future security assistance to Ukraine. To that end, I want to thank my UK counterpart, Defense Secretary John Healey, for hosting this Ukraine Defense Contact Group, and for his leadership on support of Ukraine. President Trump gave me a clear mission: achieve peace through strength, as well as put America first, our people, our taxpayers, our borders, and our security. We are doing this by reviving the warrior ethos, rebuilding our military, and reestablishing deterrence. NATO should pursue these goals as well. NATO is a great alliance, the most successful defense alliance in history. But to endure treaty for the future, our partners must do far more for Europe's defense. We must make NATO great again. It begins with defense spending, but must also include reviving the transatlantic defense industrial base, rapidly fielding emerging technologies, prioritizing readiness and lethality, and establishing real deterrence. Finally, I want to close with this. After World War II, first General and then President Eisenhower was one of NATO's strongest supporters. He believed in a strong relationship with Europe. However, by the end of Eisenhower's presidency, even he was concerned that Europe was not shouldering enough of its own defense, nearly making, in Eisenhower's words, quote, a sucker out of Uncle Sam. Well, like President Eisenhower, this administration believes in alliances, deeply believes in alliances. But make no mistake, President Trump will not allow anyone to turn Uncle Sam into Uncle Sucker. Thank you, and we're glad to take some questions.
Thanks very much. Let's start with the U.S. traveling TV pool with Liz Spurdon.
All right, I'm gonna actually go to the Blaze TV when they interviewed Mark Levin. But before I do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin D3. This is a great supplement to absorb calcium. It helps with bone density if you do resistance training. It also is a gene expression cofactor, which is very important. So you have cellular processes happening. And also vitamin D3 helps to get rid of cells that need to go into apoptosis. It stacks really well with K2 and K7. So vitamin K2 and K7 helps with bone density and cardiovascular. Take them together, and what will happen is you're reducing the calcium depositing around already formed plaques for your vascular system. When you're doing resistance training, what will happen is you're sending a signal to the area that you're doing the weightlifting that you're targeting. It's sending a signal for additional bone matrix to be deposited. And over time, what will happen is that you're going to have more bone density in those areas. That's why it's so important to do weight training, especially when you're 40 plus years of age. Take calcium. I take it through getting milk. So I take milk every day. Some people prefer taking a calcium supplement, but take calcium, take D3 and K2 together, couple that, and it targets two systems. Your cardiovascular system helps to improve the health of your cardiovascular system by reducing plaque formation, but also D3, K2 taken together with calcium and doing weight training is going to help you build more bone density. So it's really important. You look at a geriatric patient that hasn't gone through resistance training and taken the proper supplementation, and they're starting to fail. Their systems are starting to fail. Their bones are brittle. They don't have the muscle mass like they should. Very important to look at this holistically. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the vitamin D Ep3 and get the K2. Very high quality products. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order.
I'm minding my own business. I always say to you, man, whatever it is, this guy comes out and said, I don't agree with you. I said, okay, great. Like, what are you doing with me? I said, what did you do? I was a teacher. Where were you a teacher? New York City. Retired. You're retired, yeah. I said, you must have a pretty good pension. I work for that pension. Don't be so defensive. I just said, you must have a pretty good pension. And you moved to Florida. Yeah, and I don't like DeSantis either. What do you think of that? I said, I don't really care who you like. I'm making a point. You work in New York City, you probably get the best pension imaginable, even for public unions, for teachers. Then you move to Florida because it's a no-tax state, because you don't want to pay the New York taxes that pay your pension. And then you come down here, I let this son of a bitch have it. I said, then you come down here, you don't like DeSantis because he's a conservative Republican. You ran your ass down here to enjoy the environment in Florida, and also because you didn't want to pay New York State income taxes. That's why you came down here. Tim Kaine, this guy's gotten dumber, nastier, and he always looks like he just fell out of bed as the years have gone on. Tim Kaine tells federal employees, ignore the Donald Trump offer to quit. Now, he happens to represent Virginia, which probably has more bureaucrats now than Maryland. It's always a race. And this is his constituency. Bureaucrats and people in the public dole. They've turned Northern Virginia into Maryland. And Northern Virginia's turned Virginia into Maryland. What's wrong with Maryland? A lot. Anyway, so here we are. Here he is. Don't take Trump up on the early severance or return. Why not? It's a trick. It's a trick. Tim Kaine doesn't think his voters should show up for work. No. Tim Kaine doesn't think his voters should consider early retirement. No. Tim Kaine doesn't think a single one of his voters working in the bureaucracy should be subject to removal. No. Tim Kaine is a jackass. Go.
So my message to federal employees who received this is, yeah, the president has tried to terrorize you for about a week.
A long time ago, I learned that when I was losing my hair, don't do the stupid part then. Yeah, people, this, and they do this, they can't make up their mind as a host. He can't make up his mind where to put his hair goes back, his hair goes over. I mean, you can take pictures of it. It's actually funny. Hour to hour, it changes. Here's a guy, look at where he puts his part. Why does he have a part? Look at his hair, he's a mess. I'm just saying. He's got no hair up here. He's got this going on, so he throws it back. And I'm supposed to take him seriously? Number one, I wouldn't take him seriously anyway. But look at him. Go ahead.
And then gives you a little sweetheart offer. If you resign in the next week, we're just going to pay you for doing nothing for the next 7 months.
So dummy doesn't even understand what the offer is. You have to show up for work immediately. I do, but I don't want to. No, you show up for work immediately. Okay? Immediately. And the issue of whether you accept the severance or not, it's on the table for a significant period of time. You don't have 1 week to make a decision. Go ahead.
Don't be fooled. He's tricked hundreds of people with that offer. If you accept that offer and resign, he'll stiff you just like he stiffed the contractors.
I tricked hundreds of people with that offer. Has he even read the offer? No. No. Seems to me it's a generous offer. I think it's 7 or 8 months of severance. In the private sector, maybe you got 3 months. I mean, if you're senior, maybe you get 6 months. You get it with pay. For the bureaucracy, and I know I was a temporary.
When restructuring companies in corporate, it's usually based on years of service. These are like Fortune 500 companies, very large companies. Smaller companies, I would agree with him that it's maybe a couple months or a few months for normal employees, and then senior level 6 months or so. But larger corporations, it's really based on years of service. And there's a whole package and calculation based on number of years of service, and your average last 5 years of salary and what your position was. Some of these severance packages even have, you know, some fringe benefits where some of the medical care is paid for a certain duration. So it can get kind of complicated, especially for large corporations where there was 20 years of service or 25 years of service. But, you know, it can also be very simplistic too, you know, in smaller organizations. But I've seen both sides of this. Now, he only brought up the simpler version, but larger corporations, especially when you're dealing with employees that have put in 2 decades or 2.5 decades worth of work, they usually get a pretty good severance.
Employee in the bureaucracy. In the bureaucracy, your pension, and they may have even sweetened it more. You get a payment every single year, not a little. If you've been in the bureaucracy 20 years, at 20 years, you can retire. So if you go into government at the age of 25, you can retire at 45. A lot of people do, and then they work for defense contractors.
But the thing is that
federal
they
employees.
used to, I don't know if, I know with new employees at the IRS, but I don't know about older employees. Or I wouldn't say older employees, ones that have long years of tenure. But there is a 401k version of kind of a pension, but it's employee funded at the federal government. It used to be a pension, and then a pension could be defined benefits or defined contribution. You know, defined benefits or a contribution pension kind of plan. So defined benefits is like when you retire, this is what you get based on a calculation. Years of service, what your average salary was, blah, blah, blah. All right. Most of those have gone away in corporate and in the public sector. Not all of them, but most of them have gone away. Now it moved from defined benefit to a defined contribution plan. And the employer will put money aside, but the payout is not guaranteed. So it's kind of like in between a 401k and a defined benefit program. So in a defined benefit program, they're going to say you get $60,000 or $100,000 a year, every year, no matter how the pension performs. Okay, so that's defined benefit. Those became so costly that most employers have gotten rid of them, including the public sector. They're still around, but they're rare. Then there's the defined contribution plan. And that is that the employer will set aside money. The employee can, it sometimes can contribute, but the employer sets aside money. And depending on the rate and the performance of it, that's what the employee gets, and it's not defined. It's not like a promise of $100,000 a year when they retire, right? Then those programs started to go away, and it moved towards a government version of a 401k, where the government will put in a contribution of, I don't know, so many percentage of the annual salary if the employee also contributes a max amount, right? And there's probably some variations of the theme here. But the point is that a lot of these pensions for new government employees, they're not there anymore. They're a government version of a 401k. They're not a defined benefit program. Now, some do, I mean, ones that are just, you know, retiring now, well, they may be on an old plan, but you have an employee coming in new, most of those are not defined benefit. You'd be lucky if you get some sort of, you know, pension contribution type plan. But most of them are even worse than that, and that's where the employee is setting aside, and there's an employer match that's to that, which is more like a 401k. It's more like, I think there's like a 501k or whatever they have, wherever they call it, but there is a government version of it for government employees. Now, some of the older employees that have been working in the government 30 years or so, I don't know if they've been transferred over to the new plan or, you know, they're still with the defined benefit program. But new ones or recently, you know, hired like the last few years, I don't think that they have the defined benefit program. So it gets a little complicated. Most companies have moved away from a defined benefit program.
That's what they call double dipping. And you get medical coverage for the rest of your life. And what is your pension based on? Social Security? No. Remember I told you they have their own plan. And I don't know if they changed it. I don't remember if it's the last 3 years or last 2 years, but it's the average, listen to this. It's the average of the last, I think it's 2 years, but maybe it's 3 years of your service in the federal government, of your peak salary, the last 2 or 3 years, you get for the rest of your life. That's why a lot of people go into the government. They don't necessarily like the work. Maybe it's monotonous depending on what they're doing. Where do you work? I work at the Department of Agriculture. How's it going over there? I don't know. I don't know crap about farming, fruits, vegetables. I don't even like fruits and vegetables. Well, what are you doing at the Department of Agriculture? Nothing. I'm working from home. I'm moving paper. And don't tell me to show up for work. I can do nothing at the office, or I can do it here. I can do nothing, period. It doesn't matter where I'm located. Look, I'm being a little harsh, but some people deserve it. Fact of the matter is, the benefits are enormous. So you get people who, for instance, maybe they'll live in Maryland, which is a fairly high tax state. They'll live in Virginia, which has become a relatively high tax state. They'll retire in 20, 25, 30 years. I mean, think about retiring in 30 years. You're 55. You got a big life ahead of you. And what do? They move to a no-income tax state. Florida is filled with local, state, and federal bureaucrats who have retired. Take the money that the taxpayers in these states are paying, these heavy tax states. They're subsidizing it to be in a no-tax state, in a no-income tax state. I mean, it's kind of perverse if you really think about it. I was next to a guy, I digress for a moment, I think I will. So I'm in this diner, minding my own business. I always sit at the end, whatever it is. Some people are very friendly. This guy comes out and said, you know, I don't agree with you. I said, okay, great. Like, what are you doing with me here? I said, what did you do? I was a teacher. Where were you a teacher? New York City. Mm-hmm. An old guy. Retired. So you retired, yeah. I said, you must have a pretty good pension. I work for that pension. Hey, don't be so defensive. I just said you must have a pretty good pension. Can you move to Florida? Yeah, and I don't like DeSantis either. What do you think of that? I said, I don't really care who you like. I'm making a point. You work in New York City. You probably get the best pension imaginable, even for public units, for teachers. Then you move to Florida because it's a no-tax state. Because you don't want to pay the New York taxes that pay your pension. And then you come down here, I let this son of a bitch have it. I said, then you come down here, you don't like DeSantis because he's a conservative Republican. You ran your ass down here to enjoy the environment in Florida and also because you didn't want to pay New York State income taxes. That's why you came down here. And you walked away. He was upset with me. But this happens all the time.
All this and much more. Sign up for Levine TV.
Some of the older government employees may be on the defined benefit program pension, but that is starting to go away. So I'm not sure that, you know, newer employees, if they have that, but it might be certain government agencies or certain government departments may be still on the older plan. I don't know. But the trend in nonprofit, in the public sector, and in the private sector is employee contribution, employer contribution plans, like a 401k kind of version. Now, again, it started as a defined benefit program. You put in X amount of years and you are promised X amount per year, no matter how the pension is performed. Sometimes these companies have huge pension liabilities and they're not performing at the market. Their portfolio is performing lower than what the outlays are for the pension. So there's a huge liability that they have to service. That was the reason why they moved away from the defined benefit program. But then what happened was as they moved towards, well, it's not defined, we'll put it into a fund, and depending on the performance of the fund depends on, you know, how much you get. And so it's kind of variable, you know, you may get less. It reduces the liability for the company, and the employee didn't have to put in. Some of these programs are quasi, so maybe the employee can put in a contribution, but if the employee's put in a contribution, it's more like a 401k. So this defined contribution plan is more like, okay, a certain number of years that you work, and you know, you will, you know, you qualify for a certain amount to be put into the pension, and as it's growing at a certain rate, whatever that pool of money is for you will be allocated to you for, you know, each year of retirement, with, you know, the assumption of a 20-year drawdown or a 25-year drawdown, whatever, right? Usually those programs are worse for the employee, better for the employer. The best ones are the defined benefit programs for the employee, worse for the employer because of the pension liability. And then the defined contribution program, less liability, but there's still, you know, there's still market performance that has to take place. That money is set aside and it's based on market performance. And depending on that market performance depends on what that pension is going to be for that employee. And then it went even further to a 401k, where most of the contribution is from the employee, right, based on market performance, and then there's some sort of employer match to it. And that's where most of them have gone, and the government has that now. That I do know. Now, are people grandfathered into the old system based on number of years served? I don't know. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the NAD+. This boosts up your energy levels. This also helps to heal your DNA. When you get older, you get DNA damage and you need to heal it. Your body has natural processes to heal DNA. But NAD+ is a supplement that helps that process. So please take NAD+ to help to repair your DNA damage, but also take NAD+ to protect your neurons. Neural protection is extremely important once you're over 40 years of age. Ubiquinol, the most bioavailable form of CoQ10 that you can get. And I sell it on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The best Ubiquinol CoQ10 that you can buy. You can't get CoQ10 better than what I sell. Let me repeat that. the most bioavailable, best CoQ10 that you can buy anywhere. Now, ubiquinol is an antioxidant, so it's going to soak up free radicals. Ubiquinol boosts up energy levels, and ubiquinol helps to protect your neurons. It's synergistic with NAD+, and that's why I've been taking ubiquinol and having it in my stack. It's synergistic with C60, and by doing this, you're improving your mitochondrial health. You're going to have more energy, you're protecting your neurons. And when you have more ATP, your neurons are going to fire better, you're going to produce neurotransmitters, you're going to have more energy. And then not just for your neurons, your other cells will have more energy. So that means that you'll have more ATP for your other tissues, so they perform better. And again, it's synergistic with C60, and C60 does a lot of really good stuff for your body. NAC is something that I've added to my stack. Why, Dr. Paul Cottrell, did you add NAC to your stack? Well, there was a lot of people that are in the anti-aging and longevity crowd that have been taking NAC and been getting huge benefits from it. Why does it work? NAC boosts up glutathione levels. Glutathione is really important as an antioxidant in your liver, all right? It's synergistic with C60, so you're soaking up free radicals a different way. So you're reducing the stress on your cells. NAC also helps to detoxify your liver and your kidneys. That's really important. You need a good, healthy liver, and you need good, healthy kidneys. The last thing you want is a kidney transplant, all right? So you want healthy kidneys and a healthy liver. So detoxify your liver and your kidney with NAC, especially if you take acetaminophen. People that take acetaminophen because of pain or because of headaches or whatever, over time could cause problems with your kidney or your liver, and NAC will help you to detoxify that effect and boost those glutathione levels. It also helps to calm your central nervous system. It reduces anxiety. And by doing that, you're going into a parasympathetic mode. And by being in a parasympathetic mode, that means your heart rate is better. That also means your cortisol levels are better. When you have chronic high levels of cortisol, you have higher glucose, and higher cortisol levels are immunosuppressive. That means that your immune system is down. It's not functioning as well. What you want to do is boost that up. All right, you want to boost up that immune system. So you have to bring down the cortisol levels. Well, NAC does that for you by reducing the anxiety and putting you in a parasympathetic mode. Really important. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the NAC, add that to your stack. Okay, let's go to Trump with Modi in the Oval Office.
In Ahmedabad, Namaste Trump, or the Howdy Modi in Houston, we had conveyed a very strong message of our friendship through those events, and the resounding echo of those events can be heard even today in India and the world.
भारत अमेरिका संबंधों को प्रगाढ़ बनाने में, उसको एक नई ऊंचाई देने में और व्यापक कर देने में राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप की पहली टर्म की बहुत बड़ी भूमिका रही है, और मुझे विश्वास है कि दूसरे टर्म में भी हम उसी गति से आगे बढ़ेंगे.
Excellency, you made immense personal contribution towards strengthening of our relations, towards making them more comprehensive and attaining unprecedented heights in our relationship. And I firmly believe that in your second term, we will work with even more speed.
Well, you know, let me give you my take on India. All right, India is going to be an important ally for the southern front on China if the United States goes to war with China. It has a lot of people, So there could be big business deals that go there. But the thing that I saw with globalization and technology transfer in automotive was that high-paying, good-paying, high-paying engineers were losing their jobs in the United States, and it was going to India, or the Indians were coming here on visas, work visas. And what would happen is that they would work for half or a quarter of the cost. So how does an American engineer compete with that? It wasn't just happening in automotive, it's also happening in tech now. And people in tech are complaining about it. So there's a huge technology transfer that took place to Tata and Wipro and you know, all these companies, these tech and automotive and engineering companies over in India. So Americans lost their jobs. I'm not a big fan of sending jobs to India or Indians coming to America to do their work. Now, you know, it would be lovely if they bought our products and maybe they make some things and we'll buy theirs. But us killing and doing technology transfer to India, India didn't create anything. Indians took our knowledge because Wall Street pressured these big companies to cut development costs so shareholders would have a better share price. But over time, what happened was that you lost knowledge in the United States and it was transferred over. No, that's bad. That's not good. But from a strategic point of view against China, an ally in the Southern Front makes sense, especially with India and China, and in between there is Tibet. You know, there's a history there that if we align ourselves with India, we'll be better off if we go to war with China. That makes sense. Sending weapons there, building a strategic alliance, that makes sense. But I'm against this technology transfer and hurting American jobs, especially engineering jobs, because that's where that's where the Indians pump out a lot of students. They have a lot of students. I'm not so sure that they're that bright. All right, I don't think that a Indian engineer is any better than an American engineer, and in a lot of ways, I think an American engineer is better because of the creativity. But what they have that the United States doesn't have is that they can work at a very, very low cost. So an American engineer can't compete from a cost perspective. Now, what I saw was that, you know, you'd have one engineer and you would have 4 Indian engineers, and they would have to do it 3 times before they got it right. So, but it was still saving the company money. But at this time, you also, during these technology transfers, there were recall issues with cars and, you know, problems with subsystems and stuff like this. All right, so in the end, did it save money for the OEM? Probably not. But it's a big problem. Technology transfer to India, I'm totally dead set against it. Totally dead set against it. All right, let's go to France 24 here. I think they're talking about Trump.
France, Germany, the US, anybody to the Russian point of view and to the Russian view of the world by saying this is a fact. You know what? Ukraine is part of Russia. As Trump said, part of Russia, part of something else, we don't care. But the facts.
There was the USS Truman collides with a merchant vessel in the Mediterranean that Live Now published about 28 minutes ago. The story broke this morning, or maybe early afternoon. But let's pivot to that because I didn't get the full story. I only got just a quick clip of it in my morning show.
That occurred late last night in the Mediterranean involving the USS Harry Truman as it collided with a bulk carrier approximately at 11:46 local time on February the 12th off the coast of Port Said. They're just north of the Egypt as well. So we're following it very closely here on Live Now from Fox. And Lucas Tomlinson following this, saying that the U.S. Navy aircraft carrier colliding with a merchant ship involving in this collision there approximately 11:46. So late last night. And of course, we're following the latest in the developments as the bulk carrier is now back on the move. So some big news in terms of that, of what we're following here. Let's bring into the conversation right now maritime and shipping expert Sal Mercogliano. Sal, thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. And these are two very large ships in a very large portion of the Mediterranean Sea, a very popular corridor there. How exactly does this happen?
Well, it is a really busy part of the ocean. The Suez Canal, especially waiting to get into the Suez Canal, is an area where there's a lot of shipping. I've been in and out of the Suez Canal multiple times. And I can tell you that when the convoy comes through the Suez, ships travel in a large convoy. The ships had just come out of the Suez Canal and they were departing. And the Truman was right in that area. So the merchant ship, the Bitchute, was a Panamanian flagged bulker. It was coming up from Jordan. It was heading to Romania. And that ship had just left the channel and was setting a course northwest heading toward Romania when it came across the Truman. Now, when these ships come out of the Suez Canal, it's almost like being in the front of a schoolhouse where the school lets out for a day. There's a lot of traffic coming at you all of a sudden. And it seems as if the Bitchute and the Truman ran into each other in that anchorage, a very busy anchorage at the time.
Yeah, that is so very interesting. We're going to get into some of these aspects, but as you posted on social media that this bulk carrier is again on the move, I want to put this up here on Live Now from Fox, as the Panamanian flagged ship is underway, departing from Anchorage north there of Port Said, north of the Suez Canal there as well. The ship must have been released by the Egyptian authorities. I do want to ask you, the fact that this ship, again, is on the move is good in terms of the fact that there apparently wasn't a ton of damage, correct?
No, in fact, we saw an image released from the ship showing some damage up on the starboard side bow, the front right side of the vessel. So some of the mooring equipment had been damaged. One of the hatch combings, which is the covering that goes over the forward hull, had received some damage to the vessel. The fear here is, while the damage appears very minor to the Bitchute, what kind of damage was inflicted on the Truman? The Truman has these large protracted overhangs on the side of the vessel, including the ship's elevators. And there's a big question about whether or not the Truman suffered any major damage. We know Bitchute has been released by the Egyptians, doesn't appear to have any major damage. That's a good sign right there. Hopefully we see the Truman isn't much damaged either.
Yeah, that is so very true. And of course, there were no reports of flooding or injuries on the USS Truman. The Navy said the ship's propulsion plants, which some are nuclear powered or quote, safe and stable condition. When you're talking about that, the nuclear power aspect of this, does that raise the concern level for you at all?
It does. I mean, obviously a nuclear power plant always concerned, but this is a warship. I mean, this ship has lots of redundancy and protection built into it, literally designed to take torpedo hits and protect its propulsion plant. I'm more concerned really with damage to the flight structure of the ship so that it won't be able to continue its mission. We know the ship had just come out of the Red Sea. It had gone up to Ceuta Bay up in Crete for about a week, and now was heading, the only reason it would be where it is to head southbound back into the Red Sea. Obviously, with the situation going on with Gaza, President Trump's recent statement on Gaza, the waiting on the release of further hostages, the deployment of the Truman was really meant to get back into the Red Sea to ensure that the Houthi don't resume their strikes. Remember that we haven't seen a strike from the Houthis since January.
Yeah, that is a very good point. They don't really want to tell people exactly where they're going, but the question continues to remain, how does this happen? You mentioned the fact that it was patrolling the Red Sea potentially as well. This isn't a ship on its own. It's with a carrier strike group. Can you talk about that aspect? Because there might be escorts for this aircraft carrier. How many ships are around it? And are we surprised that they didn't see this bulk carrier prior to a collision?
Yeah, when we talk about an aircraft carrier, we usually talk about it and its escorts. In this case, it had one destroyer with it, the Jason Dunham. It left some of its escorts down in the Red Sea. So one of the things is that really the utility of a carrier strike group is you can allocate and dispatch part of its units down there. So the cruiser Gettysburg and one of the other destroyers had remained in the Red Sea to provide patrol while the carrier came up into the Mediterranean for some rest and relaxation and also some refitting of the vessel. Now the question is, will it be able to continue on? We're going to wait and hear from Sixth Fleet whether or not the ship can continue. Will it have to head back to Suda Bay, or more importantly, will it have to head back for further repairs either in France or back to the United States?
Yeah, that could cause some problems as we'll have to reshuffle some of those assets in that region. I do want to ask you, because we talk about that in the region. We know I've listened to some of your comments on YouTube about the fact that the U.S. Navy has some priority in terms of getting through the canal, but they don't necessarily have the right of way around different ships. Can you talk about that aspect? Because this is the U.S. Navy, this is the USS Harry S. Truman. It has to coordinate with other ships. It doesn't necessarily have the right of way, correct?
It does, but the United States, through treaties with the Egyptians, have been able to get preference to get the ship through the canal first. And this is probably one of the reasons why Truman was in the position it was. As the convoy was coming out of the Suez Canal, it would have been preparing to head southbound into the canal. So it would have had to pick up its Egyptian pilots sooner and then head southbound in. But the relationship between the United States and Egypt has been very strong. We've seen the ability to deploy vessels through this region consistently go back to the Persian Gulf War of the 1990s. And U.S. and Egypt has had a very solid relationship. Obviously, Egypt has been suffering greatly because of what's been happening with the Houthi. They lost $7 billion in tolls last year out of potential $10 billion worth of tolls. So this is a big issue for Egypt. They want to make sure their anchorage is safe, the canal is safe. So Egypt is going to be doing a lot here to investigate it. We're going to have a multinational investigation. The U.S. will be investigating the Panamanian registry, which is the flag under which the Skeetus was under. But also Suez and Egypt will be doing it to make sure that there is safety in the anchorage. It's just a very crowded anchorage. It's a very tight spot to have vessels in, especially in the evening when you have the lights of anchored ships and the background lights. It can be very confusing.
Yeah, that is very good, as it happened at 11:46. And I just keep coming back to the fact that these ships are so grand in scale. If you've ever seen an aircraft carrier up close, over 1,000 feet long, 250 feet wide, and you can see the flight deck, this ship that it collided with, 50 tons, 190 meters long. Can you put some of this size into perspective? Because these are very large vessels.
They are very large vessels, but actually we're very fortunate that Skeetus wasn't the size of like Ever Given that got stuck in the Suez. That vessel was 1,300 feet, 200,000 tons. So, I mean, we're kind of fortunate that Skeetus was kind of on the smaller side of a bulk carrier, but at 650 feet, 50,000 tons, it is substantial. And whenever you bring that much amount of steel together between the Truman and this bulk carrier, you're going to get damage, and there's going to be shock effects on the vessel. There's going to have to be repairs to it. And unfortunately, you know, we sail 100,000 vessels on the ocean. The ocean has never been more crowded than it is right now. And even with the Suez being slower because of the Houthi, it's still a busy choke point. And the reason we call it a choke point is because you bring all these ships together into one narrow area, and accidents will happen.
Yeah, we've seen accidents. Of course, this one not a tragedy, not a fatal one, so that is potentially good as well. Anything else that you'd like to know, because you are so fascinating in terms of your maritime knowledge? Anything else you want to know, Sal, before I let you go?
Yeah, we're waiting to hear back from Sixth Fleet, excuse me, in this case, about what exactly happened on board. Obviously, they're doing a damage assessment right now on the Truman, whether she's going to be able to continue her mission or not. One of the interesting things was that Truman was not broadcasting its international signals on the, you know, ships have this automated information system where they broadcast. She was not broadcasting at the time. Most Navy vessels don't like to do that, but they do it when they're close in. So there's going to be a little bit of an examination. Let's not forget, a few years ago, back in 2017, we had two very fatal collisions involving U.S. Navy warships. That happened out in the Western Pacific, the USS Fitzgerald and McCain, where we lost 17 sailors. And so obviously there's going to be a lot looking at here. This is a very high value asset, only one of 11 aircraft carriers right now. And should this ship be taken out of action, that's going to be a substantial hit for the United States Navy.
Yeah, that is a very good point. Of course, secretive in.
And the reason why is because our Navy doesn't have enough ships. And because we're in two theaters right now, the Middle East and in Asia, and the Asian theater could ramp up at any moment in time with a flash pan of Taiwan, that means that perhaps our Navy isn't ready enough for a full conflict with China. Now, of course, the battle space is changing with drone warfare and under the water and in the air. So, you know, maybe we don't need as many ships, but, you know, a major force multiplier is an aircraft carrier, especially in the Asian theater. So it's a problem. And because of what's happening in the Middle East, all of our Navy, not all, but a lot of our Navy capability has been shifted over. The centroid of our projection of of naval power is shifted towards the Middle East and away from Asia. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the resveratrol. Resveratrol I've been taking for decades. It's very important. It helps with mitochondrial health. It boosts up energy levels. You'll get more ATP. It'll help to get rid of cells that are in senescence. You don't want cells in senescence because they build up a lot of garbage called lipofuscin and other toxins. You want to get rid of them, have them go into apoptosis. And you want to activate your basal cells, your basal layer, the area of your tissues that have adult stem cells, to populate new tissue with cells that have longer telomeres. Because the closer the cell division is to the adult stem cell, the longer the telomere is. And that is one indication, at least cellularly, at least biologically, of age. Another indicator is methylation. But please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the resveratrol. Help support my work, and stack this with C60, NAD+, or ubiquinol. You get a lot of benefit from it. Now, the third pillar of the core, like I said, is to bring down pro-inflammatory cytokines so you can boost up your immune system. Turmeric is an antioxidant, soaks up free radicals, but it will also bring down inflammation, those pro-inflammatory cytokines. So when you bring down chronic inflammation, you're actually boosting up your immune system. Why, Dr. Paul, how does that work? Great question. When you have chronic inflammation, you have high cortisol levels. Cortisol is immunosuppressive when it's chronic. So you don't want that. You want to bring down your cortisol levels. So you have to cut the signal for the cortisol from being produced. And in this case, we're bringing down pro-inflammatory cytokines, so you break the signal, so the cortisol levels go down. And therefore, you don't have an immunosuppressive compound floating around in your serum called cortisol. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans. It's a great stack to bring down those pro-inflammatory cytokines and boost up your immune system. And since we were talking about C60 and having it as a synergistic stack with resveratrol, NAD+, and ubiquinol, C60 is a very potent antioxidant. Very potent. Take a teaspoon a day. It's going to soak up free radicals. It's in a lipid. All right. You can get it in avocado oil, MCT coconut oil, or extra virgin olive oil. It has to be in a lipid so you can absorb it. Now, C60 is a 60 carbon molecule that will soak up free radicals. It's about 1,000 times stronger. One molecule is almost 1,000 times stronger than a molecule of vitamin C. You can't take enough vitamin C and absorb it to have the same effect. Now, why it works and why it's so potent is that C60 is a 60 carbon molecule that looks like a soccer ball, a fullerene, all right? Or a buckyball. And the charge, the electrons, move around this molecule. And because there's a dynamicness because of the movement of these electrons, it can soak up and neutralize free radicals and then recharge. The molecule can recharge. Now, if you look at a molecule of vitamin C, once it attaches to a free radical, it's done. It can't recharge. So one molecule of vitamin C neutralizes one free radical. Well, one molecule of C60 will neutralize hundreds, if not 1,000 free radicals. Now you see why it's so potent. So you take a teaspoon a day. When you do that, what happens is that your tissues are going to have less stress. The cells are going to have less stress. The mitochondria is going to have less stress because you're soaking up all these free radicals that cause damage to the cell. And by doing that, your mitochondria is going to be healthier and you're going to have more ATP and the cells are going to perform better. Now, when you get older, you accumulate a lot of free radicals and you accumulate free radicals exponentially faster. So you're literally oxidizing faster when you get older. And that's why older people seem to get older quicker. All right. And then what happens is that energy levels start to go down. So you're oxidizing faster and your ATP is dropping. And when your ATP drops, your cells don't have the energy to do the things it needs to do. That means your endocrine system goes down. That means your exocrine system goes down. That means your immune system goes down. That means your organ systems start to not perform as well because it doesn't have the energy. It's that simple. So if you do things where you're reducing the stress due to free radicals, then you're boosting up the health of the mitochondria to boost up the ATP levels so you have the energy source for your cells to perform better. And so what happens, taking a teaspoon a day over time, what happens is your tissues perform better, your organs perform better, your glands perform better, your immune system performs better, your endocrine system performs better. Your brain performs better because you need lots of ATP for your neurons to fire. You need lots of healthy mitochondria. And so as mitochondria starts to age and decline as you get older, then your neurons don't fire as well. And then you have negative neuroplasticity. And then all of a sudden you have forgetfulness. And then it gets to the point where you have gait issues and you can't move around. And then, you slowly drift off into, lullaby land, right? Well, you can slow that down radically if you listen to me. C60 will soak up those free radicals and stop that early transmission of aging and boost up those energy levels so you're moving around and you don't have the atrophy. And if your neurons are firing because you have healthy mitochondria, guess what? You have positive neuroplasticity, especially if you train your mind, like learning new things and talking to people and writing and reading. But then also mindfulness, spirituality has a big component to that, to activating certain areas of the brain. But if you look at this holistically, you can slow down the aging process. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to live until you're 500 years old, but sure as shit, you're probably going to have a better 80-year life with proper supplementation and a holistic approach and some luck versus someone that doesn't. It's a shame on how unhealthy some of these geriatric patients are because of lifestyle and just not taking the right supplementation. Now, they also have money issues too, income issues too, and that's a societal issue that needs to be addressed. But please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, take C60, a teaspoon a day. It's better to take it on an empty stomach and you'll absorb it better. Take it before a workout. It'll soak up the free radicals that you're producing during your workout, so you will recover quicker. You'll notice that you'll recover quicker if you take C60 before your workout. All right. And also by stacking it in that core that I was telling you, the max 35 in the first pillar, neutralize pathogens, boost up your immune system. C60, absorb free radicals. the turmeric ashwagandha and lignans to bring down inflammation, and boost up the immune system, and to take the boomer boost, where you're increasing your metabolism and increasing your energy levels. When you do all that, you're going to get pretty damn healthy pretty quickly. All right. All right, I want to pivot over to France 24 as they're dissecting this Trump-Putin negotiation with
Yeah,
Ukraine.
which is a scenario which could be possible.
You claim that you need to go into Kaliningrad, for instance?
Kaliningrad is Russia, as far as I know.
No, but I mean, if the Russians say that Kaliningrad's under threat, is that where the problem may arise? Or
yes, the problem. I think if there's a weakening, too much a weakening of NATO, of everything, it's true that the Baltic state is a temptation for Russia, especially if there's a blockade of the Finland Gulf. So there's a risk there, but a small risk, because I think Article 5 still plays a role because the US is a huge nuclear power.
a small risk, Hedehon Gorgesani, of Article 5 being tested?
Well, look, I think one of the things that is happening with this, and we'll see where this goes and what the actual peace process is and deal is in the end. But one of the worries, especially of the Europeans, is the emboldening of Vladimir Putin. I still hear to this day those who are saying, well, you know, Ukraine is specific because Russia, Ukraine, they have this history, as if he's going to be fine with 20% of Ukraine and he's going to stop there. All the Eastern European
all
states,
these international gurus, probably coming from the Kennedy School over at Harvard, they're getting the obvious wrong. The obvious is both sides are exhausted. Ukraine needs further U.S. support just to hold the line. And then Russia has a lot of, Putin especially, has a lot of issues domestically that he has to worry about. And they're exhausted with this whole fiasco. And he knows that he's not going to keep all the land that he took. He's going to have to give some of it away. And then Ukraine's going to have to just accept it. Now, I personally think how this all started was over many decades of bad strategic policy of expansion of NATO that signaled Russia that the Western powers are not as friendly as they could be. And we should have integrated our economies together instead of demonize. There's so many people at the Kennedy School, so many people at CSIS, so many people at, you know, at these think tanks and the CFR, where they have this perpetual Cold War mentality. Meanwhile, a new threat is emerging, actually two threats now. The threat that's emerging that I'm very worried about is China. The other threat that's emerging is an unstable Middle East that's biblical. Now, how's the Pentagon gonna handle that one? Right? The Pentagon might be able to handle the first problem in the Pacific theater. I'm not so sure the Pentagon can handle a biblical war in the Middle East. So with that in mind, both sides are exhausted. And I don't see Putin like taking this, for a couple of years, resting on his laurels and then all of a sudden ramping up warfare again. He's going to wind down. I mean, not that long ago, there was talk that maybe he would get assassinated. And I'm sure he's worried about that. I'm sure that he's worried of domestic instability. It can't be that stable if he has to import North Korean soldiers. So they're both exhausted. So they don't have that big of a hand to play against Trump. And Trump knows this. Now, what Putin has that Ukraine, doesn't have is that Putin, with normalizing relations with the United States, is going to be able to integrate them back into the G20 and the G8, and stop this stupid BRICS stuff that's going on. Ukraine, on the other hand, has some serious rare earth metals that we need. But, Russia also has, an economy that can get integrated into the Western world and be prosperous and to rebuild and be a steward, for, in the Western world, right? And be allied with the United States and put a northern front on China, because the threat is China. Now, what is interesting is that some biblical scholars believe that Edom is Russia. Now, if that's the case, we know what happens to Edom in this biblical war in the Middle East. It's destroyed. So what the hell is really going on? I'm not really sure. All right? But if we just look at the Ukrainian conflict with Russia, both sides are exhausted. That's what's going on. But you got all these experts, coming right from the Kennedy School that think they know it all. And it's amazing. Now, what I want to do, I'm not sure if Live Now is posting, tracking the headlines of the evening. Let me just play this a little bit here for a second.
There was some news out of New York today. We do know that we're going to be checking in with Fox 5's Sharon Crowley. She's going to be bringing us the latest on Manhattan's top federal prosecutor resigning. More details on that to come. But Andrew, I got to ask you before we toss to our next segment here, what's tomorrow, February 14th? You're not working tomorrow, are you?
No, I'm not working. Thank you. I should have told the viewers that I'm off tomorrow. I got a 3-day weekend, but I believe it is Valentine's Day. So I believe that's every February 14th,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken.
Hope you have a happy Valentine's Day, Andrew. I'm going to be working tomorrow night. I hope you.
All right, so I'm live streaming on Rumble. I'm live streaming on YouTube. Let me do just a market update, and then I'll take this request on X Spaces. Just a reminder, the ones that are watching on Rumble and on YouTube live stream and on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com, I do have X Spaces as a call-in for people to give me their opinion about what they think is going on. But before I shift over, let me just read off what's going on in the Asian market. The S&P 500 futures is trading at 6,143. The pound USD is trading at 1.25. Natural gas is trading at 3.65. Gold futures is at 2,956. Brent oil is trading at 75.19. Copper futures is trading at 4.8. Hang Seng Index is trading at 22,181. And the Nikkei is trading at 39,287. All right, with that said, let me pass on the mic here. Hello? You have to unmic.
Oh, I did. I was waiting for the hand because I didn't want to be rude because I'm usually in other spaces where it could be chaotic and stuff.
Yeah, well, it's I don't have that many people in spaces, but this is a chaotic show anyway, so
Yeah, it's
welcome,
all right.
welcome to the show.
How you doing today? Usually in technology spaces or far right spaces, but I'm kind of curious because I grew up with some buddies that used to go to a lot of Washington like meetings and stuff, and I'm not really into the American side of politics, but I do see that there's a straining relationship. You could see it on the face between Elon and Trump. Do you think that their agendas are kind of parallel, or you think that he's allowing him to branch off? Because he seems to be very adequate at digging to the bottom of where funding's coming from. And does this look good for America, or do you think there's some schisms here, like breaking off, like different ways that they're going? Because Trump, this first thing, all he talked about was black unemployment nonsense, and not much got done, and people blamed it on he was stonewalled the whole time. Well, now he seems like he got a pretty good, solid team. What do you see the future is, and is there any forethought or like anything that I'm on the right track, that there's seems to be a divide between those two guys as far as their modus operandi they want to go?
Well, I don't think that there's that much a wedge between Trump and Elon. What is unique about them are they're strong-willed individuals, and but Elon's a special guy. I'm not, he's like a little kid trapped in an adult body where he has the means to dream and make it happen. Many little kids would want to be an astronaut, right? Well, he has the money to become an astronaut. He has the money to make, spaceships, right? And so he has, he's smart enough, but he's also a kid of 2 at heart to keep on dreaming and trying to do amazing things. When we become adults, we have a tendency to turn off our inner kid, and we're more worried about how we're going to retire. So I feel that there's something special about Elon there in that regard. Trump also is a kid, and he's looking for affirmation. He likes to, he likes the spotlight. So both of them are kind of kids trapped in adult bodies, but I don't think that there's that much of a wedge between them. Elon at times could take the spotlight that may perturb Trump, but Trump is looking at this, he's running a corporation, aka the U.S. government, executive branch, and he's, quote, the leader of the free world, which I don't even like that term, but he's the leader of the free world. And so he has hired a consultant, like a McKinsey consultant, aka Elon, to dive in and find ways to improve the executive branch. So I see this as what you would normally see in corporate America, where you have an executive or a board that's hiring consultants to come in to restructure.
Yeah, I agree. I think Elon's like an arrested developmental, intellectual. Like, I've been in the science field since I was a kid, but I never had the money to do it. I do believe he has the money to innovate a lot of stuff. Some of these companies will spend fucking 30 years on one market ploy and never get it developed, and this fucking guy is doing it within like months. So I see the potential and the power of him. I wish.
What I also noticed with Elon is he's been lucky enough to self-fund. In many of his endeavors, he self-funded as seed, and then went to the open market or private market to get further funding. A lot of people, they don't have that seed money to self-fund, and that's what holds back a lot of good ideas. Is just you can't get the funding, and that's why people need angel investors.
Yeah, I go in a lot of X spaces. I was in a chat with him at one time, and I was on the DOGE page, #1 speaker. And the one thing that I want to iterate is he's also influenced by social sway of ideas, because there's a lot of things that he was standing staunch on that the political opinion changed, even though he said he would stand firmly on it. And I really think that the way the future is not pulling away from academia, but getting bright minds that may not have college degrees. His best effort would to start like a think tank, a college type school for innovative minds to go forward and think about some of the things that's been lost in free thinking in college courses and stuff.
Well, this is sort of what Peter Thiel did. He was, he set up kind of an angel investor fund for people that wanted to pursue, their ideas and not pursue a typical college path. So, and what's interesting is Peter Thiel and Elon, were partners with the whole PayPal thing. But Elon is we are living in a very special time. We will never see a president like Trump again in our lifetime, and we'll never see that great alignment of the cabinet and key helpers within the administration, like Elon, like RFK Jr., like Cash, like Tulsi. I mean, this is like a dream team kind of thing. I just hope that
did Cash finally get inaugurated to the position? I hope he does, because he looks like a man on a mission, and the FBI is so rife. And I'm not going to bring any politics because I'm far right, and I know I've read the manifesto of like a lot of the names at the FBI, and they're one phenotype, and they seem to go after one certain group. So hopefully he can go in there and make it bipartisan and like get rid of that one slanted side the FBI has been since probably fucking 30 years, man. I mean, when they tell you that white America is more dangerous than terrorists, it kind of raises eyebrows.
Right. My understanding today, the committee, the Senate hearing, elevated it to the floor to be discussed. So he's not confirmed yet, but he's moving through the process.
Is there any more dream team guys that you would want? Because you seem very articulate and intelligent. I got to slow my speech down because I'm very hyper, and people that from an older generation or work in academia or been around business talk slower, so I don't want to be like rude. But is there anyone else that you could think of that would be also net positive to put on his team that you could think of personally?
Well, I think two really good ones, and this is sort of a joke, but sort of not. And I think Don would laugh when he's listening. I think Don and I need to get into the Trump administration to really shake things up. but that's just a joke. But I would really like. I am concerned about the future. All right, especially with the national security state and the crazy capabilities that the scientific community, when funded by the national security state, what they can do, and especially when it comes to biowarfare and chemical warfare. So I would love to see people pushing back on the national security state and truncating it, so these sorts of programs are hindered and they don't create the weapon system that could literally destroy the planet.
Well, the linchpin is that it's stopping hate speech laws and other suppressive speech, because they categorize that in conspiracy talk. When they used to talk about, the spraying, the chemtrails of the skies, they called it fake till people hired independent scientists to collect data from it there. Then they go, oh yeah, we're just sunscreening the planet. So the major linchpin in all this is getting back to regular speech. There's no such thing as hate speech. Speech is speech, man. Unless you're threatening or posting imminent threat, everything should be open for discussion. There should be no censorship. And that's how they censor you when you start talking about, hey, there's this program opening up, and they'll be like, oh, that's conspiracy, that's a libel. And they use these hate speech laws as a linchpin and like a wedge to get in and silence people on all types of aspects. So those need to be attacked first before there could be open discussion, because They said this is a free platform, but I even told Elon, I'm like, dude, I'm being censored. And a lot of people were saying it in the discussion with him. And he's like, well, listen, we said it was free or not free, but it should be free unless you're posting child porn, hate, murder, threatening. Everything else should be good to go, man. We're not here working on people's feelings, man. We're adults here. We don't need to be censored by big tech platforms, you know?
But here's the problem, is that these platforms are also being viewed and populated by children. So a child can be reading these posts, and these are causing developmental harm with these children. Now, maybe there needs to be some sort of firewall to prevent children from getting on X. I don't know. But I agree with you, and even the Supreme Court says that the antidote to, free speech is more free speech. But what I'm noticing with social media platforms is that I'm not sure, even with free, I am for the First Amendment and the Second Amendment and the Third Amendment and the Fourth Amendment, all amendments, especially the First and Second Amendment. But I am noticing that social media has a tendency to not be the most positive that it could be. In a utopic world, these social media platforms, there wouldn't be hate. There wouldn't be people thinking about killing themselves because of what other people are posting about them. Suicide is a major problem that goes on. I mean, I've known two people that committed suicide. Right?
Well,
and so, so these platforms can push people over the edge. So
yeah, but it's like the Darwin Awards, bro. If they were meant to do it, they do it anyway. I grew up in the time before the internet, and I remember reading a Stanford study that 3% of the world population is totally immune to subliminal messaging. And so there is a lot of subliminal messaging built in. A lot of these things are built apparatuses using Madison Avenue propaganda and neurolinguistics. And there's going to be people susceptible to this, but the pre-warning, and unfortunately, modern day platforms like this have gone out of as a novelty. They're becoming the mainstream media, the new public platform. When they do, they need to have public access, free speech. If they're going to become the new news, because the old news has been so Cold War era controlled, then they need to also open up and have free, it's sad to say, but they don't teach civics no more. I don't even know what the Third Amendment is. You could ask me about ancient Sumeria and particle physics. I'm really smart with that, but I don't even know. And I'm a fucking American. That's the sad thing. They're not teaching this, and it's intentional too.
Right. No, I see your point. These social media platforms are the public square. And in a public square, there's freedom of speech. And so what happens is this platform is more of a utility or a public square than really some sort of private technology or a private corporation. So I'm with you on that, but I do think that social media and just the civility. See, if you elevate what you brought up over and beyond social media and just look at society in general, civility has really gone down. We have to be more civil. Yeah, freedom of speech, yes. But the thing is that when we lose ethics, when we lose that, what I call the affinity of God, country, and family, when we lose that, then we spiral down. People are willing to steal. People are willing to call people names. People are, will, do things that a just society and a society that has strong moral fiber wouldn't do. Like in New York, where I live, there's a lot of crime. And it's an erosion of civics and civility.
But in New York, there's a lot of diversity. And you could teach this to India. India will never be Western civilization. There's more components than just teaching. And that's why you see a hallmark amongst the Western world unscathed by intruders or people that are non-phenotype. Some people are unconducive to this this type of structure. This is a unique thing about Western civilization that built. People think America is built of a melting pot. No, this was built on Western principles, man. And when you get rid of the West, those people, you could bring as many as you want, they'll wave flags. Culturally, they're not going to apply the same dynamics to it, and people need to understand that. That's why I think a lot of civic Nash people, they lost the picture there, man.
Well, I agree with you. I agree with you, because if you look at the inflows of migrants in Europe, especially in France or even in England, it's totally changing the dynamic of the society. So I agree with you, and you see this in certain pockets of the country where these inflows are happening. But then getting into a religious point of view here, you know, India in general, based on Christian or Judaic thought, India is paganistic, and monotheism, you know, warned us around that, you know, paganism. So, you know, that might be part of the problem. But I think that Don wanted to interject here.
No, I was just coming back to like the thing that I've seen so far that Elon has expressed, I think, very well in that one press conference where he was uncovering some of the ridiculousness and inefficiencies of our government, where he's talking about the fact that this deep state, which he's essentially defining it, and you know, I think there's this idea where the deep state is connected to conspiracy theory, and I think now America's, I think, beginning to recognize that this deep state is really this autonomous bureaucracy that is no longer beholden to the American people, and the government now no longer fears the people. And I keep coming back. It seems that, you know, the remedy for this is we're going to have to rediscover that 70-76 moment about what exactly is it that we're running this experiment in. And you're going to have to rediscover that the government works for the people, and that it used to be that the politicians were scared of the people, and that it's no longer the case. The politicians are on the payroll of this autonomous bureaucracy in which that we're funding, and we don't seem to care because somehow everybody was moving into this idea of a guaranteed basic income and the fear of the pandemic. So there is this idea that we have to get back to, that we want to preserve this idea of liberty at all costs, right. And we are not fearful of uncertainty of the future, and it's reorienting our culture around this idea. We do not fear the future because we are an industrious nation built on these principles, in which we protect liberty at all costs, and we know that by protecting that, we will always we will create prosperity. Right. And so that's one, and I think the other one is there has to get back to this healthy skepticism of government that's essentially been replaced with kowtowing to these credential authorities, and the fact that we think of prior to 9/11, Rumsfeld comes out, we can't find 2.3 trillion, and then guess what happens? Right. We're off in the next endless wars of terrorism, which there's no answers. And then who do you blame? I think the first one, Assange is a person that probably will have to step back into the limelight because he was the one sort of sounding alarm bells, as was Snowden, saying this is a giant money laundering scheme. You know, but the media refused because it looks like the media was on the take. That they weren't that fourth branch, you know, that was protecting the rights by doing so we have to get back to this media also doing its job in helping us, the citizens, make sure they have access to the truth. And I don't know if there's, again, a guarantee of that other than the citizens actively participating and wanting to know what the truth is. And it's been messy. It's messy right now because I think everybody's trying to find the answers. And we have a lot of different outlets, and we need to find new channels of truth.
Right. No, I agree with you. I mean, it goes as simple as what our founding fathers said about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's that
the last thing
simple.
I tell you, but you will find essentially, I think I told you before, because what ends up happening, and I do think I look at Trump, because what he's had to navigate in the case of you have to win in the courts, but you also, in a democracy, you got to win the court of public. So Trump is a master just from television and ratings, knowing what key demographics he has to capture in informational warfare. So it's become, and unfortunately, like I said, the politicians like Trump had to go after Elon and the big tech, because they're the ones that now control the information flows. They control the searches. They have now the power of steering the public in a direction. And if they get, like we found out, taken over by the government, we'll never know. So these big tech elites also have to get on board of preserving this idea as well, because we found out before they were participating in deceiving the people.
Well, my take on the big tech, founders, like Larry Page and Sergey, from Google and Zuckerberg.
Eric Schmidt
and Eric Schmidt, they test the wind to see which way it blows, and then they'll align their politics accordingly. And so once Trump leaves, I wouldn't be surprised that if the political winds went in reverse, that Zuckerberg would say, "Oh yeah, Trump was a bad guy," and
and Paul, I'll get a little bit more detailed on this. Because I think when I saw Eric Schmidt writing his last two books with Henry Kissinger, and I've seen Lyndon LaRouche's, his research on Henry Kissinger's and his psychological profile of Henry Kissinger, calling him a homicidal, psychopath, and he should not be in charge of our State Department. He should. Due to our health evaluation, a homicidal psychopath should not be in charge of the State Department. And so when I say that, I think Eric Schmidt, when you see him aligning with Henry Kissinger, it looks like Peter Thiel broke away from Eric Schmidt. So Eric Schmidt was moving in a direction that I think, one, perhaps may be moving us in towards that idea of this new world order, whatever you want to call it, the World Economic Forum agenda. And I think Peter Thiel, perhaps, and Elon broke away, saying we're not too sure we align with this idea of you will own nothing and be happy, and that we should copy the Chinese. And that was one of Eric Schmidt's assessments as being part of the military. One of these.
So when I look at Thiel and his company, that's Palantir.
Exactly. Yep.
It kind of reminds me of Oracle, but it's a different company, but it's heavily aligned with the national security state. So it seems to me that Thiel would be maybe more aligned with Schmidt than Elon.
I agree.
I'm worried about that Palantir. Because it's kind of like Raytheon. It's got that Raytheon feel.
It's worse. It's worse because they've already said they're using AI to profile targets, then essentially using an automated kill, completely autonomous using AI. It sets the target and then uses drones to go after the target. It's almost like a hands-off assassination program.
Yeah. Well, pass it on to the other speaker, but before we do that, right now Trump is kind of protecting our civil liberties, but if we get another president in 4 years, they could reverse policy and align themselves. These Palantir type companies can align themselves and easily take away our civil liberties. So this is why it's so important to really restructure the national security state, truncate it, hopefully go back to a pre-9/11 type apparatus, and where it's the power of we the people and not the power of the national security state. But these technologies are going to be so much more advanced in 4 years that if you get the wrong president in the executive branch, or you have a party that is hell-bent on reducing the civil liberties of the people, the technologies are there to be implemented. And Palantir is one of these types of technologies. So that's what I mean, that if the wind blows a different way, I'm not sure that Peter Thiel is the savior.
No, I agree. And we're not having discussions about what it is how this technology is being used. There's no national discussion about it. It's sort of happening behind closed doors, and we hope that they're using it in a way that does not violate the Bill of Rights. You know, there's a lot of trust and a lack of openness, and again, always done with the idea of some type of military defense rationale, right? It's the same thing with the directed evolution and the bioweapons. Well, they're doing it, so we need to preempt it. It gets the same rationale, and I will talk to citizens, and they're saying, well, I've been told by, they'll rationalize the fact that we're doing these things.
Right. The other guy left, so I'm not sure if he lost his connection or he just bowed out. I'm not sure. But no, I agree with you, Don. I mean, I just, but I'm concerned that if Trump doesn't get everything he needs to get done, 1984 is 4 years away.
Yeah, and I'm not too sure either with it, but all I know is that he's got to rush to disassemble, this corruption, and then at the same time put these transactions in place to de-escalate all these wars that have been teed up. Because I think, one of the guys that I follow has talked about this during the 1930s as well. There's a coming sovereign debt crisis, and when this happens, the governments, which again end up trying to preserve themselves, they go to war. Why? Because it's the greatest distraction. So NATO is pushing for a war in Ukraine because Europe is toast. And so they will probably need some type of excuse. Otherwise, they may lose control of their power structure.
Right.
And that's the fear, that they'll try to create some type of false flag and lure the countries into another endless war, and they get to reset things under the idea like we had to do it, and we need to take these powers away from the people so that we can fight this enemy. And if so, Trump is in a rush right now. In my mind, he's got to de-escalate all of these wars, and that's why I said I'm hopeful, because Elon from the outset was trying to tweet about it. He didn't have as many followers with the power that he had, but he was saying, why aren't we negotiating a peace deal in Ukraine? And he took a lot of heat for it. And I think now, we're finding that the neocons are now got attached to the Democratic Party, and now trainees jump ship to back Kamala. So I think Bill Kristol, they're all supporting the Democratic Party. So they become the party of war, and now Trump, Elon, and his crew are the party, and the Republicans seem the party of peace. So
right.
If we and also I think we're talking about this. I call it like a catharsis, where we're going to deal possibly with these unanswered questions about the deaths of JFK, RFK, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. We get to find out finally those deaths that put us on a trajectory of these endless wars and race wars and domestic tensions and violence, and we find those reasons. My concern then would be is how people might react if they find out who those actors were and wanting justice.
Right.
That would be the opposite.
Well, I mean, there's definitely that veil that was hiding the deep state. It's being lifted. We're just living in just really unique times. I mean, who would have thought since 1962, 1963 was when JFK was assassinated, that his nephew would be taking an oath in the Oval Office to be Secretary of HHS. I mean, we're living in just really amazing times that no one would have thought would have ever happened back then.
And I still don't think, obviously, one person, Trump would never go up against, I would say, the deep state. And obviously, Chuck Schumer said that, like day one, he went to the CIA headquarters. And so he would not be going into this without some type of intelligence behind him. So
that's why I'm thinking that inside the national security state, there is the white hats, black hats.
And there's more good people than are bad. They're more good than there are bad. It's just these people are beholden to pay, and they probably get into a position where they took something. It was a Plumer or Plaza deal, and they have no ability or no way to whistleblow because they're unprotected, and a lot of people have been killed. So now we start offering path forward, and all of a sudden it's this giant catharsis. And as the dominant world power that's created a lot of the chaos around the world in these, in our covert intelligence agencies, all of a sudden the world looks a lot different.
Right. Well, I really, for me personally, I was out of the country when 9/11 happened. I was on an automotive project in South Korea. And, when I came back to the United States, so I saw the event kind of almost like an out-of-body experience. I was out of the country, seeing my country being attacked and not understanding fully why this was all happening. And it took like almost 2 months to like absorb it all. And I binge watched, cable TV, watched hundreds of hours of CNN. And, I kind of absorbed it and, and didn't fully understand like what was really going on, but I knew it was big. And then as the years progressed and the inside job kind of conspiracy kind of, swelled in the United States, I started realizing that we are growing the national security state and that it's never going to shrink. They wanted emergency powers. They wanted more funding. Through technology, they ended up building an apparatus that we were warned not to go down in some novels that many Gen Xers were warned about in novels that we read in high school or in junior high.
And remember your point about bioweapons. It was, what does Saddam Hussein have? He has where do you get the bioweapon from? Right. And you find out that, there's anthrax that were sent to the 2 senators, right? And so there was this anthrax vaccine that was being worked on, Michigan State University, that ended up being, it's just all there. It's just that nobody got the time, and they assume that media is investigating this, but because the media was kind of controlled, as we knew from Project Mockingbird, that the church committee in which you had Colby saying that, yeah, we do have CIA agents embedded in the media. Everybody knew all along. It's just nothing happened. And now it's like every day it's like something's getting exposed. You're like, it can't be this easy. You're just kind of flabbergasted.
The system is being exposed, but there's an element of that we knew this already. Like for decades, people have known that there was a second shooter. For Kennedy, for the Kennedy assassination. Now it's coming to light that the Grassley Knoll was an important piece of the story. Well, no shit, Sherlock.
The funny thing, I went to Dallas. I don't even think they don't even say in the museum it's one bullet. I mean, it was crazy.
Right. Right. You know, did you see the episode of X-Files where they were showing the cancer man who was the one that shoots Kennedy from a manhole that's in the ground?
No, here's the crazy thing. So that was from Everything is a Rich Man's Trick, right? That was his thesis. I met the guy who was one of the investigators who was selling his book there. And so he took me over to that place. He said, I brought the guy who wrote that, and I showed him, I had him get in the manhole cover and see if he could shoot him. He said, and the guy agreed that's not where the shot came from. So it was hilarious. Like, I thought, well, and of course you had the Bill Cooper one. Bill Cooper saying it was the driver turning around. And he's claiming that the Japanese had the footage and actually aired it on TV. And that it was all over the Japanese TV. So but that's the type of what it injects the.
I lost you a little bit there. Your connection is a little breaking up there. No, but in general, though, Don, I agree with you. And, but we gotta. A lot of people know that these things are happening.
And then you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that better?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, no, I was just saying that it's funny how I think I get a sense too. We're gonna need to rediscover God again in this country, and we're gonna have to have a connection to the divine again. I do think Trump assassination attempt. Whether I do think there's something, or he probably felt, and I could be wrong, but I kind of.
I'm losing a little bit of your signal, Don. You broke up. But I think the point you were making is that we need to become more religious, and I think we do need to. There's two things that we have to do in the country. We need to align ourselves with more religion, more spirituality, and we also need to align ourselves with constitutional principles. This is what I mean by God, country, and family. If we don't align ourselves with God, country, and family, we'll lose our country. We're going to lose the blessing that we have as a society. But I think I lost you, Don. But yeah.
Can you hear me now? I'm kind of in a bad.
Yeah, but it's breaking apart a little bit, but maybe it'll get better. Yeah, it's kind of. You there?
How about now?
Yeah, it's a little bit better. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Like I said, I think like you said, we're going to have 70, 76, and the discussions, like you were mentioning civics, what are we teaching in the schools regarding civics? What we've been teaching the schools has been DEI and ESG, and we've weaponized empathy versus some type of coherence to some type of logical structure that underpins, our experiment self-government. So, it's all been about weaponized empathy and I would, a lack of logically constructed arguments. We've been stuck in climate change, right? These are the things that have been sort of, or what is a man and what is a woman? We've turned our attention to those, the shiny objects, versus looking up as to who these puppeteers that are trying to distract us and have been benefiting from this current rage power structure.
Trump could do something that is it would be hilarious, but it would be beneficial for human health, for our health in the country. Do an executive order saying no chemtrails. And it would be so hilarious, and just the media asking questions in the Oval Office after he signs that executive order, it would open up such a can of worms. I would love to see that happen.
Well, the states that have done it, right? I think Tennessee banned them.
Right, but just at the presidential level, so
No,
no
I
more
agree.
chemtrails.
It would be another like shiny object for them, to, like the press, to be distracted by, and then he can do something else.
And they and in 10 days later, everyone can see the blue sky.
Yeah, I like I said, he's in and I keep coming back. Trump is a master. I think I said, if you study Vince McMahon and the WWE Netflix series, you realize, like I said, most people want they want a heel, and the heel by the deep state, it was always Putin. That was the heel, or it was Iran. That's the heel, it's the American people want this simple, evil person that they can take their anger out on, versus trying to understand the complexity of the deal making around the Ukraine, about the Minsk agreement and what was said, and the NATO's position. They don't want to know the dynamics. They want to know who's the heel.
This is what happened, during 9/11. Right away, it was Bin Laden, Al Qaeda, boom, enemy, and then it launched a multi-trillion-dollar 20-year war in the Middle East.
And so that's what I'm saying about the idea that perhaps these cycles of history, why they're predictable, is because of human nature. And the idea is, if for us to evolve, maybe this idea of whether or not it's forgiveness, for instance, I think might be antithetical to the idea of human nature of at an animalistic state. I think you mentioned about it, keeping us at this animalistic, that we react, versus thinking about the consequences of now a violence on another, and then thinking about what that may manifest into. And if we pull back and forgive, which is a very powerful statement, it may go against this endless cycle that repeats because of human nature. And that's maybe part of the idea of Christ, is he was disrupting. He was having us to elevate human nature to the point where we would resist these cycles, and these people playing, the puppeteers playing on these, weaponizing empathy and weaponizing, and what is playing to our lower bases, nature, lower base of our nature, that we individuals can lead us out of this. And
well, there's a psychological thing with the Nazi Party, and that it was the drumbeat, this continuous drumbeat, and the repeat of things, and it gets people into a rhythm. Once you get a group of people in a rhythm, a large crowd into a rhythm, you can control them. And as long as you can get them in that rhythm, you can see this in a mosh pit, you can see this at a rave with music that's not even that good, but people get into a rhythm and you can control them. So you find that harmonic and can control the group.
And exactly. So the book, if you get a chance, it's called Illusions of the Crowd. It's got Bernstein. And what he talks about, and this is why I think this is the constructed timeline, because they were pushing among the Christian dispensationalists this idea of a unavoidable war based on revelation between Iran and Israel, right? So this is something that if you construct the events leading, that have led up to, say, you have this fundamentalist Islamic ruler over a former Persian, very Western country, and to get rid of Persia altogether, it's now called Iran. And you start to not even erase Persian history from Americans' history books. Now it's, who's Iran? Iran is this heel, right, of this evil sheik, and that's all the people in Iran, right? And now we have an enemy. Now we call it the evil empire. And now you walk up, the story progresses, and it's hard to walk it back from the American consciousness, right? So that it's all teed up, and that's, to me, if in this book, Delusions of the Crowd, is saying that these Abrahamic religions have basically been constructed in a way to almost make it impossible to pull back from a conflict that's been ordained, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you would like this, the Blackstone. I didn't realize before the Balfour Declaration there was the Blackstone Memorial, and this Lord Blackstone in the 1890s was trying to find a home for like the Russian Jews, and the Presbyterians in the Congress, the Protestants were saying, well, we'll put them in Uganda, right? So there was this idea that they don't have to go to Palestine, but so it took time, and that's what I'm saying. It seems to be, you could argue, like this marching towards a timeline of constructed events that's very difficult to walk back, because the narratives they've been constructed in a way that it's like the WWE. The enemy said, and it's now just when to light the match.
Right. And using the vernacular of religion, it's moving towards the Messianic age. The Messianic age is this death march. It's the death march to a conflict, and it, it's justified through through biblical texts and stories about the apocalypse. So you're right. There is but this conflict, because of human nature, I don't think you can pull it back. It's going to happen. I don't think,
unless you have someone who comes back and somehow, and that's why it seems to, you could argue, you could see why, if these puppeteers, they would see someone like, say, Martin Luther, you could someone who was trying to change he was presenting another solution to this constructed racial conflict that they felt was going to happen, that they were creating. And maybe he was presenting an alternative that they didn't want to see. And the same thing, if you have a ruler who now, let's say Trump is trying to negotiate a deal that walks back he becomes a direct threat, because they need the war to distract the people to usher in whatever the system that they want to usher in. So Trump may be one of these figures and that's the way it looks to me, like he's presenting an alternative to this timeline constructed by what I would argue is this evil criminal syndicate, whatever you want to call it, that isn't looking out for the best of humanity, but just making sure that they get to keep their power.
There's one line of thought that he's getting us on a new timeline. There's also another line of thought that we're just grasping for air before we're pulled back down underwater. And that grasp of air is 4 years.
Yeah, I hold those both open. That's why I said maybe it's a test for humanity to rise up at this. And
well, this is where I keep on saying, I think we're beyond information warfare. It's about kinetic. What I saw with the whole bioweapon lab development and how people responded to it as a society, as people were getting sick, as people were dying, as the government was taking power away from them, it didn't bode too well for constitutional freedoms or people standing up for their rights.
Well, you can imagine and think about this: the people that are struggling day to day. Now tax season's coming up, and they're going, "What are my taxes going to?"
Exactly. And I'll tell you that might be actually a little pressure point that was designed by Trump and Elon.
I'm kind of thinking it's like brilliant. And that's why they have to be thinking through these.
But think about what Trump's doing. He's saying, okay, I'm going to postpone tariffs until March, maybe April. People are going to be paying taxes on April 15th. There's this investigation at the IRS. This is all going to shine in April.
And I think the big one that he's talking about, they're closing the borders off, and they're going after the cartels and the criminal gangs.
Uh-huh.
I mean, they found that fentanyl plant in Vancouver.
Well, you know, we have all that. We have the SEAL Team 6 and SEAL Team 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 7 and whatever, and we have Delta Force, and we have all these special forces and all this capability. You're telling me that we can't use Black Hawk helicopters and all that, you know, and just knock out the cartels? And it is a military operation. Why? I mean, this should be like, I mean, we have video games that do this stuff. I mean, why the hell don't we do it for real?
That's what I say. If you start to go down this logic, you're like, why is it that why is it that narco trafficking networks are allowed? And then you go down that path of Klaus Barbie being exported out of Nazi Germany to Bolivia to work as security details for Suarez, who becomes basically probably the richest man in the world at the time, selling cocaine to the Medellin cartel. I mean, and then of course we know about Panama. We know about, you know, the cocaine flying through to Noriega as being it's been allowed. And the question is who's been
Well, I think a big part of it is CIA Black Ops. I think that I think weapon and the drug running is black operations.
Exactly. So, and it was rationalized to say we need to overthrow these governments. We can't get congressional, you know, funding for it. They would never allow it, and so therefore it will justify it. And
it's not by accident. I don't think it was by accident that Bill Clinton became the president right after Bush Sr. because of Arkansas, him being the governor of Arkansas, and that's where the drugs were coming through.
It's the Mena, Arkansas airport. I think it's all there. Or the Mena, Arkansas. He was governor. Right. He was head of the city.
Yeah. So election impropriety was probably going all the way back to 1992.
Oh, the election impropriety went back to Kennedy in Chicago.
Well, that's true. That's true. With the father buying.
It's been going on for a while.
Yeah.
You know, with the mob. You know, the mob is a key player in it. They were in Philadelphia. I think you're going to find. So it's just, but this is that's the game. This is what it is.
Do you remember the story? There was one guy that had paid this. I think this was when Bush was running against Kerry. So it was his second term. And there was some guy that I believe had papers on Kerry or I think it was on Bush. And someone broke into his house and stole the papers. They were supposed to show some corruption. You remember that story? I believe it was in the South.
Yeah, there's a good book, and I don't know. Like I said, this guy Skolnick, and I think he was really his book. I think it's Overthrow of the Republic. But he even talks about there was a bunch of military people that were going to arrest Clinton for treason, and they all essentially end up, you know, dead in some type of plane crash. Right. And that's why I said I can't believe that if it's the military and they're seeing, you know, these things going on, that there wouldn't be a group in there thinking, how the heck are we going to do this? Because it can't be done purely by a military, because the people would think that that's like we're going to be losing our Constitution. So it's like this. You have to get the people to want. The people need to want it to take the country back.
The problem is and I saw this during COVID. People just have they have cognitive dissonance. It's hard to move them, even when there is an existential threat on them. There is a tendency to try to find ways to not believe what's happening. And they'll come up with as many conspiracy theories or cockamamie stories about viruses don't exist or this or that, and to give them a reason that they don't need to worry about it and they can just sit on their couch and watch TV. There's a tendency in the United States for the citizens not to get engaged. They'll try to find a reason to have the cognitive dissonance. And going through COVID, I'm not sure if people don't get galvanized with what happened, that literally the government created a virus, released it, harmed many people. Then there was, you know, an inoculation program, and they were literally, while this novel virus was spreading, found emergency powers and tried to, do all these things like vaccine passports and curtailing of people's freedoms with shelter in place and, move towards a digital currency. There were lots of things that were taking place. If it was just a random, novel virus that was zoonotic, none of these other provisions would have been ramped up so quickly through HHS. So it was all planned to roll out to take away freedoms. And people didn't fight back.
But because again, it was so complex. You have people like yourself trying to articulate the problem, and here's what. But there was too much science involved.
Yeah, and that's why I kept on saying that this was the BioPatriot Act, to make the connection between, look at all the civil liberties that were taken away and how the national security state grew with 9/11, and then project that with what's going on with the virus release. So we had a BioPatriot Act. It just wasn't called the BioPatriot Act, but we all lived through it. All those civil liberties that were curtailed, that's a BioPatriot Act. And the afterglow of it is we're living through right now. But people are fighting.
The one thing there's something about, I don't know if the Tocqueville saw this as there was something about security in crowds, people were tending not to take a position. It's like if you're on a board of directors, for instance, and everybody knows what's good, but they don't want to. You have to get the first person to step up to say what's true.
Or it gets even worse. They bring in a consultant to tell them what they already know, to give them cover. Yeah.
And that's what I'm describing, this security in crowds. It's like, well, Taylor Swift and everybody else is saying that this thing's safe, and I don't know what it was like you were outside whatever had been described as normal social, whatever the normal social zeitgeist or whatever you want to describe it as, and you were challenging that, and they could never. They didn't want to be part of the. They just want to be part of the whatever the good crowd, the well-liked crowd.
The in crowd, yeah.
The in crowd.
Right. The cool kids crowd. Yeah. But yeah, so, I don't know how to galvanize people to do things to protect their constitutional freedoms. I thought that what we went through with COVID would have done it. I would think that over 1 million people just dying from the crisis would have done it. All the people that were injured because of the inoculation would have done it. But
so is it taxes? Is it taxes that makes at some point that's what it is? It's taxes.
Maybe.
Plus,
and
you create the deal. Trump and Elon are creating the heel for the American people, and it's good. It's look where all your taxpayer money's gone. Look, and here's the people. It's like we're gonna look into some
crazy.
Power.
It's crazy how many millions of dollars is wasted on these woke agendas, and how it fed into the NGOs and the nonprofits, and then there was kickbacks. People used to work at the nonprofit, or they after they left the agency, they went to the nonprofit, and so they were funneling grants towards these nonprofits. I mean, there's a lot. These conduits of flow of funds, led to kickbacks and impropriety that was wasting taxpayer dollars, and it adds up. And the last time I looked, I thought the DOGE clock. The first time I looked at it was like 36 billion, and I think the second time I looked at it was 84 billion. So I'm not sure where it's at right now. I think I looked at it 24 hours ago, but it's probably close to 100 billion now. But will it get to $1 trillion or $2 trillion? I don't know. I mean, 2 trillion seems a bit far out there, but maybe they do get close to $1 trillion. But even $800 billion is a lot of money that, I want my taxes lower. I mean, I'm tired of paying so much tax. I mean, the economy if more people had money in their pocket, the economy would be better off. But we're just taxed to death, and it's just, it hurts us. There's a cooling of the economy because of all the taxation. I don't feel the opportunities are out there for people that are adults or even ones that are just starting out in their career, like it was in the early 90s. I thought that there was like a special thing going on in the early 90s where as long as you worked hard, you could get a good paying job, and, you know, you could save a little bit of money and you could own a home, you know, in 3 years. Now people can't do that.
Well, I think to your point, I think what's happened again with some of the ESG policies, you've looked at how many mining permits have been granted, you know, to people here in the United States. You know, so you have places like China that is just going gangbusters trying to gobble up as many of the resources they can and deals with, you know, South America and Africa. And we're sitting here on a virtual, you know, gold mine of resources. And that's why Trump, I think, is jokingly say the Gulf of America, because he knows what's, you know, in that Gulf, as well as what's in Greenland, as what's in Ukraine, as well what's in Canada. I mean, there's no reason this Western Hemisphere, which the Monroe Doctrine, which is what they try to do, is only trade with those and keep out of foreign entanglements. That can become a reality. We're really getting back to the founding fathers again. Mm-hmm. Do not get involved in foreign entanglements, just trade with them. And it's getting set up there. We do not need Middle Eastern oil. We don't need gas from the Middle East. You know, and we talking about nuclear reactors or whatever the new ones. You know, we haven't built one in a long time, and you probably have China starting to massively, you know, invest in nuclear infrastructure. So it's all there, and I think if he's successful at creating sort of this Western Hemisphere trading region, you know, there's the entanglements kind of you know, we're not beholden to the Middle East anymore. It no longer serves at you don't have to. There's no reason for it anymore. Right. And I was just talking before, is like, you look at the Ukraine, what happens with, they blow up the Nord Stream 2. You have the Burisma scandal. You got the Syria war with the pipelines going to Europe. You know, you know, you could overlay where all these supply chain lines are, and who's going to benefit from the blowing up of Nord Stream 2, and who's going to benefit from going the pipelines into Syria. It looks like criminal syndicates vying for control of these energy supply lines.
Right. No, I agree with you. You know, well, that's the reason why I'm doing these shows and these call-ins, because these next 4 years are going to be unique years, and document that the whole process is I think a body of work that's important to look back in time. But
I agree. And the one thing I think it's going to happen, I do think he's trying to pull the money creation back to the Treasury. I think that's, and
Don, I mean, when I was doing some of my research for my Ph.D., right after I finished my Ph.D., I was looking at doing some research with algorithms that would take POS information, so point of sale information, real time, and have the Federal Reserve automatically adjust the money supply based on what currency was needed. So the theory is this: based on GDP, depends on how much currency you need. So in theory, if you had real-time data, the Federal Reserve could adjust the money supply either up or down daily in real time, so there's no inflation. Inflation happens for a couple reasons, but one big reason is money, the printing of money. So if goods and services are lacking relative to the money supply, you have inflation. Well, there's also fiscal spending too side, but you can adjust for that, for the fiscal spending. So the brake or the accelerator is the money supply. But if you have all the telemetry from the points of sale in the economy, all in real time, feeding to a server, then you could have the Federal Reserve or the Treasury, you don't even need the Federal Reserve, adjust the money supply in a digital currency in real time and never have inflation. Now you add in, now when I was doing this was back in 2015, so it was more based on machine learning, this concept. But the thing is with artificial intelligence, it just is another layer of complexity and speed where you could have the Treasury Department using, I don't know, ChatGPT 03.7 or whatever it is, right? And it could just adjust the money supply to guarantee no inflation in real time. And there is no Fed announcement, no price adjustment, no need for these market perturbations because of Fed policy.
Almost probably something Milton Friedman had suggested.
But with digital currency, right, and blockchain, and being able to track all transactions in real time with AI, this seems very doable now. It's not out of the realm of possibility. 10 years ago, it was more of a theoretical. But now it's not theoretical. This is all very doable.
Well, the other thing I found is I do think that, and this guy Martin Armstrong just presented an argument that essentially when they were allowed to post e-bonds as collateral, you basically debt money became debt that paid interest. Meaning it was supposed to be with debt creation, the money creation through debt, that would become a restrictor on the money creation. But when they started to be able to post, he's making the statement that went away. So there is no restriction anymore. And it's now at this point, if it's just money's become debt that pays interest, then why does the Treasury just print it directly at this point? So I think they're kind of teeing that up. Now, what I think what's interesting is the sovereign wealth fund.
Yeah, I'm like, a piece of me is saying, well, I believe in free markets and I don't want the government to be owning assets and the Treasury owning. The way I'm understanding this is that the Treasury would own assets. Now, there is a pseudo version of this already where DARPA puts money into companies as like a seed investor. So you sort of have a government angel investor helping along certain types of technologies. Now, if they just want to expand that and call it a sovereign wealth fund, then okay. But I'm not really sure. I'm on the fence with this because I believe in free markets. I don't like government intervention.
Yeah, I'm saying that somewhere along the lines that when you look what happens in, say, Mexico when the PRI party took power, they allowed the free market, and the private entities to come in, buy up the national asset, right? So I think the idea is if, in fact, we allow companies to take advantage of, say, of the resources of the United States, for instance, that we should be able to participate in that market with the development of those resources. And that's right. Then you start building up the asset side.
Yeah, but this seems to be the opening up of state-owned assets. This seems like it's it's mismanaged. Because remember, what's the trajectory outside of the whole Trump phenomena? The trajectory of the United States was moving towards socialism. I would even say communism.
I think there's an idea.
If you have a sovereign wealth fund in a treasury that's opening up the door to state ownership, then now this is what Ayn Rand was warning us in Atlas Shrugged.
Yeah, I think it's a way of, say, self-financing infrastructure, and I get it. Like I said, I'm not convinced. Obviously, unrestricted, capitalism is maybe looks after the long-term interests of, say, the community. Because I've been on the planning commission. I've seen some horrible development. It's like, how do you create beauty some of these beautiful spaces. Some of those have been where you've had a little bit of social interference and make sure that maybe you have to subsidize a park or that you have to subsidize the architecture because an investor may only try to maximize their short-term profitability versus the long-term aesthetics of the community, which have a major impact on the health of that community.
See, with the sovereign wealth fund, though, it's going to have ownership within these projects.
That's so right.
Yeah, right. So I mean, so you have state ownership of these. So if I was thinking the sovereign wealth fund would be similar to what Saudi Arabia is doing. And if that's the case, then you have
Norway.
Okay, so but my understanding is that would mean the government could own 10% of Palantir or own 10% of Apple, or
that's right.
own now that's a problem because now you have government intervening in private markets, and they have state ownership.
Or you elect, like I said, in the case of the fact that we're looking at the people that we're electing to oversee the sovereign wealth fund, that we're electing good. So, for instance, like I said, Social Security, you have to invest in government bonds, right? So those people that are forced in an environment are basically forced into low rate returns versus say handing it over to.
Well, just imagine if Lehman happened with the sovereign wealth fund, and the way that sovereign wealth fund would probably also trade on the open market.
But didn't the taxpayer bail them out anyway?
Well, yeah, but it's almost like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, but like bigger. It's not in mortgages; it's in ownership of companies. If you play out the different scenarios, if there is an illiquid market that is where there's a major crash, not a correction, but a crash like Lehman, all right, 100-year event or even 50-year event, what happens to that? How's that sovereign wealth fund managed? What is the ramifications in the treasury? What's the ownership? Can the sovereign wealth fund have veto power, own enough of the company where it actually controls the company? Are there going to be restrictions where it can have only 2 or 3 or 4% of a company? Without understanding the details of this, it seems like the investor class, the institutional investor class, potentially could win big on this, because you would know where the government is moving the money. And if you know where the money is being moved before it's moved, then you can move and invest in those companies, and boom, you have an increase in asset share price, right? So, it's almost like there a lot of people could game the system. So how do you prevent people gaming the system? You got this is exactly what Nancy Pelosi was doing in Congress. So I'm not sure. I see some benefits of a sovereign wealth fund. I get, there's some benefit, but if you play out the different scenarios, if certain things happen and the bloating of government bureaucracy, it just seems as though corruption would just manifest itself within the sovereign wealth fund. I mean, it just doesn't sound like free market capitalism. It sounds like communism.
Yeah, and what I've seen is, I think I've also seen the idea of, I don't even like to say capitalism, because it's just a mechanism of exchange of goods. People inputs, outputs, and people have certain desires of consumption, and they choose it. So the system itself is, I always call it, it's a network that you just, but it can be manipulated, like you're talking. You can manipulate the inputs. You could manipulate the mindset of the buyers, and then you could also manipulate the back end of the supply, and create monopolistic positions, say through like you're mentioning, say legal.
And then people will say, well, there's a shortfall of Social Security, so let's move 10% of the Social Security fund into the sovereign wealth fund, because it has a higher rate of return, but not paying attention to the standard deviation, right? And over time, let's say there's a big group of people starting to retire, and there's going to be outlays from the sovereign wealth fund, and and people are pulling their Social Security and they're checking out of the workforce, and then all of a sudden there is a drop in the market, and volatility starts to increase, and the sovereign wealth fund isn't having the same returns as the last 5 years, and then all of a sudden, there's a crash, right? If you have a lot of people retiring all at once, a lot of people selling homes all at once, if you have a lot of people exiting the market all at once, even if it's for retirement, there's going to be a market crash. So this sovereign wealth fund is setting up for other administrations to say, well, we have a Social Security problem. It's underfunded. We got the sovereign wealth fund that's returning 12% returns. Well, let's just move it over. I mean, people want to already invest to, I think, the discussions were 2 to 3% of your Social Security to go into the market. Well, yeah, you could earn a little bit more, but the average person isn't going to make that much. But the risk to lose is much higher. I think the average person should have a no-risk retirement through Social Security is a better option than the potentiality of earning a little bit more money on 3% of your Social Security. But you could lose half of that 3%. So I'm not really sure that's a good deal.
And I'm saying,
but who's going to win is not the drawer of Social Security, not the retiree. Who's going to win is the one that's managing the money. This is like a class action. It's the same issue with class action lawsuits. The people that are harmed don't get that much because there's so many people that are harmed, but the lawyers make a ton of money. So why would we want to enrich the institutional investor, the institutional manager of these funds versus the ones that are actually really taking the risk? So I have an aversion for this. I can see that there's some benefit, but in the wrong hands, this thing could get out of control.
Right. But I'm saying if you could say that the Social Security system is socialist, right? So the idea is you would want to privatize the retirements because there is no guaranteed future.
Yeah, but here's the problem is that I paid into a system for many years that actually supported the previous generation. So the generation after me is supposed to support my generation. That's the way it's. We don't pay into our Social Security. We pay into the previous generation Social Security payments. So,
which is government bonds.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, yeah, but well, I mean, we are charged through our salary, right? Everyone is charged Social Security tax, so we pay into Social Security, but that payment isn't for us. It's for in my case, it's for my parents' generation, the baby boomers. Gen X is paying for baby boomers. Gen Y will be paying for Gen X. So there is no such thing as I paid into for my Social Security. I paid into the baby boomer Social Security. The next generation, right, the Y generation is paying in for the X generation. So no one pays in for their Social Security. It's another generation that pays for their Social Security. It's always lagged. So it's
essentially a Ponzi scheme.
Well, yeah. And then add insult to injury, the government took those funds and spent it in a war. And that was the whole idea of the lockbox by Gore. Put the Social Security in a lockbox to make sure that it's protected. That's not overspent. But what the government did was an IOU because it had a never-ending war in the Middle East because of 9/11. So this is another reason why the national security state needs to be truncated, because they destroyed Social Security, because they borrowed Social Security to pay for a never-ending war. They didn't even win. So what they did was is now they have to issue bonds to be able to pay the IOU. They don't have the money to fill it back up. So now in the open market, they're borrowing money, and then they're paying, we're paying our Social Security, but they also have to issue bonds because of the IOUs that they took out during the 20-year war in the Middle East. But during that period of time, that first administration for Bush Jr. and Gore, when they ran in 2020, there was talk about the needing to secure Social Security so it can't be used for other purposes. That was probably the only Gore policy that I agree with. Everything else I disagree with Gore. But the lockbox and the Social Security was super important, and we didn't do it. And now it's underfunded, and we got a big problem. But now the investor class is saying, well, solve the unfunding issue. We'll solve it just like, other unfunded pension problems in corporations. Cut the benefits and take risk in the market to try to get a higher return. Well, that might work for a few years, but what happens when the big crash happens? And a big crash always happens. You just don't know when. And unfortunately, when you need it, that's usually when the crash happens. So only the investor, only the money manager is going to make the fees that are going to benefit from this operation, but the actual retiree could lose their shirt or lose a portion of their of their savings. It's just not. I don't know. I just, maybe I'm open-minded. I'm an open-minded person. In a couple months from now, I may think, yeah, the sovereign wealth fund is a good idea and not to worry about it. But at this moment in time, it's like I can see good intentions that turn into bad policy, especially for my generation, where we have a Social Security system that is extremely underfunded. Do we really want to risk blowing it up on a sovereign wealth fund? I would say no. Because Wall Street managers are going to make a ton of money on this kind of policy, but the average person in America is not. And just think about what happened with Lehman, where people are saving and saving and saving for 30 years, right? And they're about to check out of the workforce, and Lehman happens, and their 401ks, even though they did everything right, they saved money and they didn't take the vacations and blah, 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 right? And they have half their 401k turned into a 201k because of bad policy. Bad, bank regulation policy, financial engineering and everything. This sounds like sovereign wealth fund is kind of like almost like financial engineering 2.0 here. It's scary. The potential for failure, if in the wrong hands, could be devastating. But I don't think it would be under the Trump administration. It would be somewhat benign under the Trump administration. But when another administration comes in, how do we know that they're going to borrow from the fund? There's going to be an IOU, and then they're going to, issue some sort of derivative instrument to backfill the borrowing, and something blows up. When it comes to finance, there's always someone trying to find a way to make money on it, and that eventually 10, 15, 20 years later, it blows up. This is what Minsky was talking about. There's always financial engineering that is exotic, that turns vanilla after the blow up. but it starts something that seems like, oh, it's a great idea. It's, sovereign wealth fund, great idea. But get another administration on board and they start borrowing money. Social Security was a great idea. Then it became unfunded because of a never-ending war in the Middle East. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about sovereign wealth funds.
It's on the table. So yeah, I'm not either. I just
it's Saudi Arabia doesn't have the same debt structure that we have. Doesn't have the same population. Doesn't have the same social dynamics. It's totally different. So comparing it to a sovereign wealth fund in another country and a sovereign wealth fund here.
But I think it's worse there because their sovereign wealth fund is underpinning, their guaranteed basic income at many levels. So the thing about the United States would be if we go into a new, where we get rid of these, release some of the regulations, get rid of some of these policies, and allow for the true potential of American innovation to grab a hold again, then the wealth that's being created from this, can the government participate in this wealth creation to create this fund that then do not have to have debt being printed as a means to fund things. Right. So you're basically monetizing the balance sheet, the asset side, and so yeah,
I mean, there's some benefits to it, but there, it's financial engineering, and financial engineering will blow up. That I know. All right, Don, we've been going for like 3 hours here. I gotta get to bed now. It's getting late, but I do appreciate the call and the conversation. We'll have to pick it up on another day. But I see your point, and the sovereign wealth fund looks like it's going to happen. I'm just concerned that in the wrong hands, it could be explosive.
Yeah, and what I'm seeing, the way he's constructing this, Paul, I think he's trying to pull us back from the war. He's going to try to de-escalate the tensions in Europe because the European government's going to need to create a war to destroy. He's going to try to defuse Iran, and I don't know what deal he's making with China or how that's the one, like you were saying. I don't know what's going on there. That seems to be something that's sort of not talked as, it's not in front page news right now, is what's happening, the tensions in Taiwan. And maybe it's a foregone conclusion that Taiwan is taken by China. And the idea is you get Taiwan, but we get Panama and out of Canada, and we're putting in new trading block. And if you want to sell into this, you're going to have to manufacture in this trading.
Right.
And that's the way it seems like the world is moving to trading regions, and manufacture in the regions in which you're selling into the market.
Right. Yep, I agree. Well, we'll have to carry this conversation on another day, but I do appreciate you calling. It's my bedtime now, but for the ones that have been watching on Rumble, thank you very much. I know that people have been watching through the whole stream. And then the ones that have been watching on YouTube, thank you very much. I haven't been able to monitor the chat. I apologize for that. But I will be doing another show tomorrow, so stay tuned. But it is my bedtime now, and I'm very tired. But thank you for listening, and have a good night.